What'd you say?
No. Okay, I'm going to call the regular council meeting to order of April 26th, 2021. I've got a proclamation for the National Day of Mourning for April 28th, 2021. Whereas April 28th is observed across Canada and in countries around the world as the National Day of Mourning for workers killed, injured, disabled, or suffer disease as a result of work. And whereas April 28th was proclaimed a National Day of Mourning by an act of Parliament on February 1st, 1991, as a day to remember, reflect, and recommit. And whereas thanks to the commitment and dedication of those who fight for improved workplace health and safety every day, advances have been made that make Ontario, Alberta, a safer place to work. However, despite this progress, too many people continue to lose their lives or suffer an injury or illness as a result of their job. And whereas every worker has a right to return home safe and sound at the end of each day, whereas April 28th of each year is a day to mourn and remember all workers who have been stricken with illness, injured, or have lost their lives on the job, a day to remember children left without a parent and families facing hardships, including family and friends, who nurse or care for ill and injured workers, a day to renew approaches to governments for tougher occupational health and standard safeties and more effective compensation, a day to rededicate ourselves to the goal of making Canada's workplaces safer, and whereas by working together with employers, workers, and health and safety partners, we can prevent injuries and deaths to workers before they occur. Therefore, I, Mayor Tyler Gandam, do hereby proclaim April 28, 2021 as the National Day of Mourning in the City of Watasquan and encourage all citizens to observe this National Day of Mourning in recognition of workers killed, injured, disabled, or suffer disease on the job. Item 3, the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Nielsen?
May I add an item, please?
Please, yeah.
I'll term it Integrated Hub.
Which will be G.
Thank you.
Anything else? Motion to approve the agenda as amended. Councillor Blatz, those in favor? Carried. Item 4A, approval of minutes. Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, April 12th, 2021.
I move that City Council approves the Committee of the Whole minutes of April 12th, 2021.
Moved by Councillor Lonsdale. Any errors or omissions? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried.
I move that City Council approve the regular council meeting minutes from April 12th, 2021.
Moved by Councillor Lonsdale. Any errors or omissions? Those in favor? Carried. 5A, public hearing, bylaw 1922-21 to redistrict Plan M3, Block 11, Lot 1 to 3, 4816 50th Avenue from DDO Downtown District Overlay to C2 General Commercial District. I do declare the public hearing regarding proposed bylaw 1992 it should be 20 or 21. There's a discrepancy on the
Sorry, -21.
21.
My apologies.
Okay. Opened at 16:04. I'll ask the manager of planning and engineering to explain the purpose of the hearing. Welcome,
Thanks,
Andrew.
Worship. This public hearing is to satisfy section 692 sub 1 of the MGA, which requires that we hold a public hearing for land use bylaw amendments.
Has notice of this hearing been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation and bylaws of the City of Watasquan?
It has, according to our advertising bylaw, we are required to advertise this public hearing on the city website at least 10 days prior to the public hearing. So we did that. We also advertised on the city's social media as of April 15th, and we posted, or this was advertised in the Pipestone Flyer app on April 22nd.
Great. Can I have Development Services provide their report regarding this matter, please?
Yes, so very quickly, this is a public hearing for an application to amend the land use bylaw to rezone this property to support a proposed use there, which is essentially an automotive focused use, which is not currently allowed under the zoning. In administration's opinion, the proposed use will be entirely contained within the existing building, which means that there shouldn't be any nuisance or negative land use impacts to the adjacent properties. And so for that reason, this rezoning would be appropriate.
Have we received any written submissions?
We have not.
Is there anybody wishing to speak directly to council on this matter? We'll have first call for those who are registered, and then anyone else who wishes to speak may have the opportunity. Please note that all speakers will be given no more than 5 minutes to speak. Any registered? No?
We had none registered, no.
Okay. I'll have the second call for anyone wishing to present to this matter. And third and final call for anyone wishing to speak to this matter. All right. Council will discuss and debate this matter later in the agenda. I declare this public hearing closed at 16:06. The bylaw is considered as an agenda item later in this council meeting. Item 7A, bylaw 1988-21, borrowing for 62nd Street to Evergreen Close local improvement.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're bringing this one in as the second reading now that the petition deadline has passed. And I've got Melody here to present this second reading.
Welcome, Melody.
Hi. So we've gone through a lot of this with the first reading. So the amount for the municipality at large is for the road and the ditches. So that's 1.2 million there. And then we are looking to get the local improvement costs for just the actual pavement of the road surface itself for 455,395. So that would be the amount the municipality would be looking to borrow on behalf of the residents. And then for engagement, we had an open house with the residents on February 4th. And we sent out the local improvement letters to the residents on March 12th with a deadline for petitions of April 12th, and no petitions were received.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion on second reading. Councilor Hillgarner.
I move council approve second reading of bylaw 1988-21, bylaw 62nd Street.
Moved by Councilor Hillgarner. Any discussion? Councilor Bronco.
Are we, are we this year putting asphalt on that road, or are we just gonna leave it for gravel?
So we are looking to do the first layer of asphalt this year, yes.
Due to the water table so high in that area, is there any concern by the engineering department that's gonna stand up? Because if it doesn't, then next year is, you know.
The engineer has no concerns. What they've done with their design is they slightly raised the roadway elevation, so that'll take it out of the water table.
Thank you.
Councillor Hillgartner.
Well, yeah, has anybody in there right now since the block is moved and stuff? Because we have some culverts that have written 6 weeks ago. Like, I know raising the road is solvent, but if the cost is already raising culverts, then you got that. Has anybody been around to address that?
Sorry, I could not hear you.
That's okay. Through the chair to Councillor Hillgartner. The frost heave happens each year with the culverts, and so the design that they've come up with is going to eliminate that frost heaving, but that's something that we've seen each year that I've been here. Yeah.
So, you pay the road, that's not right.
So when we pave the road, that's not going to affect the pavement on the road.
No.
Okay.
Melody or Andrew, do we have any idea on how many of the property owners might be paying the full amount upfront? Or is that even a consideration or something that we need to worry about?
It shouldn't matter, and we haven't heard, we haven't had anybody indicate which option they would like to go with, as far as I know. Melody?
No, I have not heard from any residents.
Well, we're financing, like, as we borrow it and they're being financed, they're paying the interest on it anyway, so it's not like it's anything that's coming from the city to cover that expense.
That's right.
Okay. Councilor Brocco.
Thank you, Tyler. Melody, if the heave seems to be, we have a guarantee on this thing that it's going to go for so many years, 2 years, the normal life of our contracts and watasquan warranty. If down the road, say 3 years down the road, this don't work, are we going back to the residents and say you got to come up with some more money, or is that it for them? Because this is a prime, I wouldn't say prime, this is a, what's the word? I keep looking for these words, these special words you guys like to use. An experiment, because the water table is so high at that area, it's never been that high in 10, 15 years. Down the road, something happens to that road, who's liable?
The city would be liable. It wouldn't fall on residents.
Nothing to do with the engineering firm guaranteeing us it's good for 5, 10 years?
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, the road is designed for 25 years, and if it fails prematurely, for sure, with under 10 years, we would be having discussions with the engineering firm for sure.
Thank you.
Councilor Hillgartner.
Thank you. Through the chair to Sue, under the reconstruction road, this budget of over like 1.257 million, does that include the drainage ditch that will have to go to the north? Is that part of that funding?
Through the chair to Councillor Hillgartner, we are looking at the entire drainage. The team has a plan to accommodate the drainage on this street, but there is a bigger discussion happening right now through our engineering team and through lawyers to try and figure out how we're going to help alleviate some of the issues in that area.
So that's not in this budget.
Getting it off of this road is in that budget, but the ultimate solution is not. It's part of a different discussion that we're having.
Okay.
Anything else? When we went through first reading, I half jokingly asked about extended warranty, but then was probably more serious than I thought I was. Is that an option, or is that something that we've looked at?
If you skip ahead, sorry, to the next agenda item, there's discussion on the extended warranty in there.
Oh, okay, perfect. Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Ty. Question to Sue. Sue, you said, if I may, Chair Sue, you said 10 years. something goes wrong, 10 years, the engineer, but we have roads that we built that the manholes or the roads that settle the manholes after 4 or 5 years, nobody comes back to fix it because the contract's a 2-year warranty. What would the engineer be guaranteed 10 years if the contractor's only giving us a 2-year warranty?
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, we don't have engineers that design catch basin replacements and manhole replacements. That's just our regular program that meets our engineering standards. And I use 10 years just as an example because I think you said 3. You said 3. So for sure, if it fails prematurely at 3 years, we will be going after the engineering firm to cover that. But if there's a manhole that's installed and it's not compacted properly, that's on us. We either didn't inspect it properly or something happened, and there is only a 2-year warranty in that, and so then it's on the city.
Thank you. Just wondered. You said 10 years. I was like, thank you.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that city council's, I move that city council approve third reading of 1988-21 being the bold bylaw for 62nd Street to Evergreen Close.
Moved by Councillor Hillgartner. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 7B, bylaw 1989-21, local improvement bylaw, tax bylaw for 62nd Street to Evergreen Close, local improvement.
So this is the bylaw that would allow us to implement the tax as discussed on the residents. So it would be $15,179.86 per parcel. And that would be work out to $801.46 per parcel per year. And that's divided up amongst the 30 parcels there. Now in here, I included that discussion on the extended warranty. So in the tender, we did not include the extended warranty. We just felt there was too many risks for the benefits that we would get out of the extended warranty and too much additional cost. So you can see there's the risk of third-party damages over 5 years. There's the risk that asphalt pricing is going to increase over the next few years. There would also be consideration to that final lift of asphalt put on at the end of FAC. And there would also be risk that the contractor could go out of business.
Any questions, clarity, or something I'll make the motion? Councillor Billingsley? That's okay. I missed the whole extended warranty piece. Didn't expect you to.
We're on the third, are we? That's perfectly large.
Can you read that?
There it is. We're on third, is that correct?
No, this is second reading.
Second reading, thank you. I move that City Council approve second reading of bylaw 1989-21 being the local improvement tax bylaw for 62nd Street to Evergreen Close.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Councillor Bronco?
Thank you, Tyler. Just a question for boring purposes. We have 2 lots that's undeveloped there. Does that mean that if those lots, the tax are going to go or whatever it costs on those 3 properties, If he sell, do we have a caveat on that land that if he sells that, the owner pays or the developer pays?
It's the current owner that pays.
Thank you.
Councilor Billingsley.
We've got 20% contingency by the engineer and then 20% with the city. Is that standard? To have 20% on both sides? Like that's a pretty substantial amount of difference of what the project, how much we're borrowing or how much we estimate it's going to be, and or is that normal? Seems a lot. And it is more than normal. Why?
It is standard for the consultant to include a 20% contingency. We as the city added the additional 20% contingency because this was local improvement and we wanted to be sure that we were presenting the worst case scenario to the residents for costs.
No, I didn't quite catch the explanation as to why the city.
Just because it is a local improvement, so we wanted to ensure we were giving the residents the absolute worst case scenario for the costs.
Why is this different than any other project?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, I would also like to add that this is one of those times when we talk about contingencies. There's certain times where we know what's going to happen and certain times where we don't. And this is one of them where we don't know what we could find in a lot of places. Like we do geotechnical testing and we try to find the best information we can. We could run into some serious problems here. And so having a higher contingency is normal. I would also like to add that the costs would be based only on what we spend and that we would be using our project management principles to ensure that we're keeping costs down low. The consultant that we have on this project has continually delivered projects under budget for the city of Watasquan. And so we would only be charging the residents based on what we actually spent.
Councilor Nielsen.
Along the same lines, to whomever, through the chair, I guess I should say. So there's obviously been identified a higher level of risk to this project, and hence the secondary contingency. Has there been sufficient due diligence done to mitigate risk beyond just a contingency? I guess the fact that there's perceived to be a level of risk that warrants putting a substantial contingency in place because we don't know what we might find. And I recognize with many projects, we may not know what we will find, but this has been kind of a controversial project from the get-go, from individuals saying that the project won't work, to people saying that they're all for it, to people saying, no, we want something different. Are we, aside from the contingency, are we putting ourselves at risk from a liability perspective in the case of a failed project?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen. I think we did that when we approved this construction project in the first place. It just should have never been built the way that it was. And I think that we understand the risk is high and the team has accounted for that. And I have complete faith in not only our internal team, but McElhaney on keeping the costs under control. And I mean, if we get out there and they open something up and it is way beyond our wildest imagination, we will be coming back to council to have a discussion about that. But I think from what I've seen from the project and the discussions and the design that I've seen, they've covered everything that we need to be worried about.
Thank you. And then my second question then, through the chair to Sue or Melody, is when the project begins, what oversights are put in place? Is McElhaney on site 24/7? I'm being facetious with that remark. Are our staff on site 24/7, or is it a drop in, drop out? Over, like, if we know it's high risk, and we know that if we find something that we're surprised by, we'll immediately put a stop to it. The stop only comes when somebody like McElhaney or our own staff put a stop to it. To me, the construction company just keeps digging the hole. So how do we ensure maximum oversight?
Melody, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so McElhaney will be on site while construction is going all the time. And then our project management team, we usually go out to site twice a day too to see what's going on. And on top of that, McElhaney would be arranging for geotechnical testing while the work is being done.
Thank you, Melody.
Councilor Morocco.
No, I think my question's been answered.
Anyone else? Second reading, ready for the question, those in favor? Opposed?
Move the city council approve third reading of bylaw 1989-21 being the local improvement tax bylaw for 62nd Street as Evergreen Road.
Moved by Councilor Billingsley. Any discussion? Ready for the question, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Seven C, bylaw 1992-21 to redistrict plan M3 Block 11, Lot 1 through 3, 4816 50th Avenue from DDO Downtown District Overlay to C2 General Commercial District.
Thank you again, Your Worship. So arising from the previous public hearing, this is second reading of this rezoning bylaw. So quick summary one more time is that administration is in support of this application because the proposed use is a 0 lot line building, which means the building takes up the entire lot. The proposed use that would be under this zoning is for it's an automotive focused building, but doesn't include automotive repair. So there wouldn't be the typical fluids, chemicals, or noise and that kind of thing that is a major concern with automotive type uses that are currently contemplated in the land use bylaw. So in this case, administration is in support of this rezoning. One of our primary considerations is under the municipal development plan. The zoning compatibility chart indicates that this current zoning would be compatible with the surrounding uses, provided that appropriate buffers are in place. And given that the building entirely encapsulates the lot, in administration's opinion, the potential nuisance and land use conflicts would be mitigated that way. So with that, administration does recommend approval.
Looking for second reading.
I move that the city council gives second reading to bylaw 1992-21 to amend the city of Watasquan land use bylaw 1804-13 to restrict plan M3 block 11 lot 1-3 4816 50th Ave from DDO downtown district overlay to C2 general commercial district.
Moved by Councilor Hillgartner. Any discussion? Ready for the question, those in favor? Carried.
I move that the city council gives third and final reading to bylaw 1992-21 to amend the city of Watasquan land use bylaw 1804-13 to restrict plan M3 block 11 lot 1-3 4816 50th Ave from DDO downtown district overlay to C2 commercial district.
Moved by Councilor Hillgartner. Any discussion? Heard for the question, those in favor? Carried. 1 second. Might just do a, Paul, are you ready with your presentation? No, with the community safety and well-being strategy. Okay. If council's okay with that, if we can hear that first, and then we'll hear Councillor Nielsen's agenda edition of 8D, just for a meeting and scheduling conflict. All right. Perfect. And we are going to skip to eight D.
B?
8D as in Delta.
Good evening, Council. This evening, I am bringing to you a request for decision on the community and safety and well-being strategy. I have a project update as well as an advisory committee terms of reference for you to consider and hopefully approve this evening. So, as you know, administration has been involved as a pilot project with the community safety and well-being strategy. This is a effort between the Reach Edmonton and Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention. Watasquan was selected as a pilot site in fall of 2019, and we have been working since then with some turnover on in administration to move this project forward. The scope of this project is to develop a community safety and well-being plan to create and implement a model to reduce crime and build capacity among service providers in rural communities. On November 9th, 2020, I was here in front of you folks asking to redirect funding away from a municipal policing plan and into the community safety and well-being strategy, which was approved at that time. The pilot sites for this project include the city of Watasquan, village of Basicer, Lac La Biche County, Beaver Lake First Nation, Athabasca County, town of Athabasca, Northern Sunrise County, and town of Peace River. The project was originally intended to conclude in 2021. But Reach Edmonton has lobbied Alberta Solicitor General to ask for an extension of a year as a result of lost time due to COVID-19 pandemic. This extension is expected to receive approval and the pilot project would conclude in 2022. When I talk about the pilot project, I'm specifically referring to the support that Reach Edmonton and the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention provide, the support that they provide to municipalities going through this journey. So progress to date, city administration has been attending monthly meetings for the project. It's provided an opportunity to work with those municipalities that are participating to discuss project methodology, provide an opportunity for knowledge exchange with experts. There's commonly training and speakers that are brought in, as well as provide an opportunity for pilot sites to share how their projects are progressing. In January and February of this year, the training was provided to pilot site participants from the city of Watasquan, 2 members of city administration, members of the RCMP, AHS, and Alberta Justice represented the city of Watasquan in that training. And the purpose of that training was to ensure that we had understood the methodology and had the knowledge and tools to be able to go forth in our community and build a community development strategy, community safety strategies rather. So in the training, one of the pre-development activities that is recommended prior to the development of community safety and well-being strategy is that of establishment of an advisory committee. An advisory committee allows the establishment of partnerships between different groups that can address local needs. Additionally, it results in the development of individuals with a range of knowledge, skills, and resources that can leverage to identify current and emerging issues and determine the best way forward to respond to them. Administration facilitated an initial discussion aimed at the development of the terms of reference for an advisory committee in our community on March 16th. Invited to that discussion were members of the RCMP, AHS, Alberta Justice, Family and Community Support Services, and Watasquan Regional Public Schools. The group discussed what outcome participants wanted to achieve in the development of community safety and well-being strategy, how the project and broader implementation should be governed, and what should be included in terms of reference for an advisory committee. Which brings me to the development of terms of reference for an advisory committee. Administration utilized this feedback to draft terms of reference for this committee. The mandate that we developed is the committee is to oversee the development and implementation of the community safety and well-being strategy while ensuring the identified and emergent needs of the community are serviced through a coordinated, facilitated, and supported community response. The committee has been envisioned as an advisory committee authorized by City Council. Membership of the committee includes designated representatives from City Council, Indigenous community, Watasquan Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, Alberta Health Services, Watasquan Family and Community Support Services, Watasquan Public Schools, and City Administration. The committee serves three primary functions. The first is to oversee the development and ongoing evolution of a community safety and well-being strategy. Today, we do not have a strategy, but over the next year or so, our hopes are to work with those community members, as well as others in the community, to develop a broad community safety and well-being strategy. The well-being piece of the strategy has not been defined yet, but think well-being like things like food security, mental health, addictions, that type of stuff. The second piece, and just as important, is to foster coordination and collaboration of community services that address the root causes of crime and social disorder, foster community involvement, leadership, and ownership. So a strong belief when we're drafting this terms of reference is that it's while it will provide value as an advisory committee in developing the community safety and well-being strategy, we want to ensure that it had a mechanism in there to remain sustainable over the course of changes in the community or changes in administration. The third is to engage the community as required to build support for and ensure that the community safety and well-being strategy is meeting community expectations. So as the strategy is being implemented in the community, developed and implemented, as we're learning about what impact it is having in the community, to have that mechanism to better understand whether or not it's meeting community expectations or whether or not we need to evolve. So a detailed terms of reference for this advisory committee, which I won't go through in detail right now, has been provided as an attachment to this report. Just speaking to some of the pieces that we spoke about this evening, as far as some of the issues we're facing right now in our community with vulnerable population and this broader community safety and well-being strategy, they are very much aligned. So city administration would envision the broader advisory committee overseeing the development of a longer term, think 20-year strategy, but also developing the governance structure and systems within the community so that the strategy advisory group is connected in with the frontline workers. That piece is not ready to be presented. Those conversations have not yet happened, but they need to happen to ensure that this is sustainable for 20 years out. What the committee talked about not wanting to do was to develop a community safety and wellness strategy, an advisory committee that just provided some feedback on the development of that document. We bring a document to you folks for approval. Everybody says hurrah, and then it just sits on the shelf. So the intent of this advisory committee is to build the structures. It's essentially in the second bullet there, foster coordination and collaboration of community services is really what we're getting at there. That really is the nuts and bolts of my presentation at this time. I'd like to take any questions that you have.
Councilor Nielsen.
Do you want a motion on the table first?
No, not with this one, because we need to figure out
Okay.
how we want to proceed.
So I just, through the chair to Paul, I'd like to be clearer in terms of the conversations we've had with regard to an advisory subgroup or whatever to work directly with regard to the vulnerable population, RCMP, open door, that kind of thing, is a subset of this. Is that how you're viewing it?
Through the mayor to Councilor Nelson, yes, I think that's a good way of putting it. So the issues that we're having specific to the vulnerable population, as discussed here this evening, is very much more of a tactical frontline issue and should be led by those people that are closer to the problem. The advisory committee that we're proposing here is overseeing all issues around community safety and well-being across the community. It's longer out, it's 20 years out, and it includes key decision makers. The intent there on this advisory committee was to keep it to about 6 people to ensure that we have the decision makers at the table so that when we have something that comes up, like the issue with the vulnerable population, well, not the issue with vulnerable population, but trying to create a solution to solve those issues, that we're able to remove the roadblocks and work together. But the governance structure on how they work together right now is not in place. This is the start of going down that path.
Thank you.
I don't know, maybe that I'm not seeing it the same way. I think if I'm looking at a committee to be sitting, working with and for the vulnerable population, the hub, the city, the RCMP, and then being a conduit or doing the advocacy work and lobbying the provincial and federal government for funding and how all of that plays out in terms of how an integrated resource hub operates. For me, I think is different than what a community safety and well-being strategy or that committee, that community safety committee would be something else. I've sat through a number of the meetings with them. Heather from Sergeant Yeager's office has been way more involved than I have been with this CMNCP or whatever the acronym is for it. I see them as 2 separate things, and I would hate for the community safety part of it as a whole to get lost because we're going to be so focused on the advocacy work that needs to be done with the resource hub right now. And then I would hate that the advocacy work wouldn't get done to the level that it should to deal with that one issue. And then the community safety part of it, I think, is a separate one. I think I would prefer to see them run separately just so that something doesn't get lost.
To the mayor, I concur. I think they are 2 separate committees. Community Safety and Well-being Strategy Committee, as envisioned in this terms of reference.
Yep.
We would like somebody from council on there. It's a 20-year out committee.
Yep.
I would concur that the task force piece that's been spoke about this evening, whatever the scope of that looks like,
Okay.
very separate, very focused.
Perfect.
Back to Councillor Nilsson's piece though.
Yeah.
The vision for those that had the conversations around this terms of reference in this lot bigger committee was, but we need the governance structures in place so that, for example, FCSS interagency meets regular area Boys and Girls Club have a hub, the Open Door has a hub, right? When we're talking about execution of strategy or a 20-year plan, those groups, everybody needs to be connected and knows how to work together so that's really what that's what I'm getting at. Those systems aren't in place right now. And I would concur with everything you said and with what Councillor Nilsson said.
I just, from what I thought what the conversation was, is that it would be a subcommittee working, like still working together. I mean, everybody's working together essentially. I don't want to see one committee trying to tackle both of these issues.
Yeah, noted.
Okay. I was reluctant to call her. I'm like, am I allowed to call her? Is this my job?
I just would like some clarification then on what administration's role would be on a separate subcommittee, because we are tapped out with
100%.
projects that we can take on right now.
Yeah, and that was my comment earlier on, is that if we want communication and the city administration to be working with the hub on developing more communication out to the community, then we need to take something off of your plate. And this would be no different, that if we're striking another committee to deal with that, if this isn't council led, then we need to take something off of administration's plate that you can't do both. Like, we just can't keep spreading you
Perfect.
throughout the organization or throughout the city. Did you have something, Councilor Nielsen?
The chair then to Sue and or Paul. So in relation to what Tyler is talking about, then the work related to this from city administration has been built into your planning now. This is not an add-on.
Through the mayor to Councillor Nielsen, we were planning for this in 2021. this work around the community safety and well-being strategy has been in place since I started.
Then I want to tie the two together so that we can get them both done.
If you're willing to make one, absolutely.
I have three motions to make at this time. I move that the report titled Community Safety and Wellbeing Strategy presented on April 26, 2021 be received as information.
Moved by Councilor Nielsen. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried.
I move that the terms of reference for the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee as presented be approved.
Moved by Councilor Nielsen. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried.
And lastly, I move that City Council appoints a councillor representative to the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee to be determined.
Moved by Councilor Nielsen.
Unless someone wants to make.
I was going to say, do you want me to volunteer you, or you'll be voluntold, or how would you like to do this? Does somebody have a desire to be on said committee? Like I said, I've met with them a number of times, and I mean, it's a really good group. They've got some great ideas, and especially working through other municipalities throughout the province that share some of the issues that we have. I don't have to tell you on it. You're in. All right. Councilor Billingsley. Save me a whole sales pitch. But I mean, you'll enjoy the community. Like they're a good group to work with. Heather's been really good through Sergeant Yeager's office as well. So then we can put Councilor Billingsley to that Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee. Any other discussion? I volunteered for something and then opposed it in the middle. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. That is that. And we are moving on to 8G, Integrated Resource Hub. Councilor Nielsen.
Thank you. Bear with me, please. I think it's important that we do a little bit of background here. So I want to go and start with Council has heard from the public for years that the city needs to address issues related to Wetaskiwin vulnerable population. Wetaskiwin has for 2 years established a shelter during winter months. For these efforts, support for these efforts have been largely supported until social issues have arisen. Open Door was invited to come to Wetaskiwin to address issues surrounding our vulnerable population. Efforts to secure a permanent location for an integrated hub failed, and the organization was provided a temporary location to operate out of the Civic Building. Through council tours of the facility, discussions with medical personnel at the facility, and with Open Door staff, it's apparent that what is happening within the facility is a very successful good news story for our community. Unfortunately, the social issues spilling out of the integrated hub into the surrounding area, including the downtown core, has been a concern that's been loudly expressed to council. Requests have been everywhere from close the facility immediately to relocate it to somewhere where it will not impact me. And many have simply asked for more information. What is the plan moving forward? I think it's vitally important to provide our community with a timely communication of the current status of the integrated hub and the long-term vision of what is being contemplated. If possible, I would like to see a report that highlights who's at the table with Open Door. From the federal, provincial ministries, private enterprise, and/or personal individuals. I think a physician's report being provided would go a long ways to give assurances to the community. And lastly, an explanation of the long-term vision for the integrated hub and for the community and the benefits that will arise from this. So as that, I would like to add more work to city administration. I move that council direct administration to work directly with Open Door to create a comprehensive community communication to the community regarding the current status and long-term vision and benefits to the community. Period. You're hoping I'll be able to repeat it. I move that council directs administration to work directly with Open Door to create a comprehensive communication to the community regarding current status and long-term vision and benefits for the community. And if I could speak to that just really quickly, other than that comment, Your Worship.
I just, as long as we've got the motion down.
I'm sorry?
I want to, as long as
Okay.
we've got the motion, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And I'm not looking, because I'm equally concerned about the workload being asked of our administration. I'm not asking for this to be an ongoing activity. I think with the current noise in our community, that we would be remiss if we didn't inform our community so that I think we're remiss by not informing the community in a timely fashion. And it would be my hope that this would be a singular communication that ensures that the work that Open Door has done with various agencies or corporations or whatever isn't compromised in that kind of a communication. And that's all I'm looking for, is that our community hears from this council that there is a plan, there is a vision, and what that will look like. And I think our community has bits and pieces of that, but I'm not convinced that it's been tied together comprehensively. And I think it's important, especially at this time with the noise that's out there, that we take every measure that we can to make sure our community is more completely informed. And I do believe it will create lots more noise. But it will then be based, that noise will be based on as good information as we can provide them at this time.
Moved by Councilor Nielsen. My concern, and not that I'm not wanting to have all of the information for our community as well, is that the Open Door is not a department or a division or a part of the city of Watasquan. They've come in here with a request from the city of Watasquan with a small piece of funding to look after an issue that we've had in the city forever. I don't know how, and aside from asking our administration to go and work with the Open Door, how we can expect the Open Door to be coming back and doing this work with our administration to bring back all of that information. I don't see how that is their role in the community in terms of the work that we're asking them to do. I'm struggling with what it is you're looking for in terms of information. We have heard loud and clear from the community that the hub is in the wrong spot. Obviously, that was an issue 2 years ago, and that's when it was an emergency shelter. We've heard from the community that the mental health and addictions, public intox, the crime that goes along with that, with the population, is an issue, so we need to do something about it. And I think that, as I've said before, I'm struggling with where the Open Door, where it's their responsibility to report back to the city of Watasquan when they're doing the work that we've asked them to come in to do, because we couldn't do it on our own. And then I'm wondering where our administration is going to find this information and come back with any kind of suitable answers that's going to give anybody any kind of closure when the things that we're looking for to get that hub moved is funding, unless your follow-up motion is to say that you're willing to have the city fund the movement of the hub, that we're at the mercy of the provincial government, maybe the federal government, if they're willing to come to the table to be a part of this as well in terms of capital expenses. I don't see how the open door is reporting back to the city of Watasquan, and I don't see how administration is getting you the information that you're looking to get, aside from they're going to come back with guesses for timelines, work that could be done. And apart from the presentation that we'll get, or that the information that we'll get in terms of the work that the open door is doing or has done so far, what more information that we need to be giving back out to the general public, that we even have an idea on any kind of certainty.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
I think it's all our responsibility to communicate with our community, including Open Door. My concern is that the work that they're doing in trying to secure funding will have elements of confidentiality attached to it. And in no way do I want to compromise the work that they're doing. I just want to make sure that any kind of information that we do share is done in consultation and in respect for the work that they've been doing. And I don't want to be confrontational here, but the people that I have spoken to or have spoken to me about their concerns have said, how long? How long? And we know that a timeline attached when you're out looking for funding to make things happen is you're chasing shadows, because we are at the beholding of the people that we're looking for money from. But the question that's being asked in the community is, hey, City Council, how long are you prepared to continue signing a SOL to keep the integrated hub in our downtown core? And I'm not sure we've wrestled with that topic in our conversations, because I think we all have great hopes that things are going to happen and unfold in a timely way that meets all the concerns that you're expressing, as well as addressing the needs of a vulnerable population in our community. We know that if we were to not sign a SOL, that puts a timeline on the open door, according to the contract that's been signed. I don't want to go down that way. I would rather make sure that our community is informed as best we can. And maybe we should be asking the question. We direct City Council, or we direct administration to inform the community about how we're going to be dealing with graffiti, garbage, and all the rest of it, because those are questions that are real and happening in our community. And I'm trying to be an advocate for a long-term solution while being respectful of the community who's asking questions of us. And if my motion isn't accomplishing that, then I'd be happy to change the motion. I would like to be an advocate moving forward, but I also want to be an advocate for being open and transparent and informative to our community, which is what we've said that we will be for them. And if this isn't doing it, then I'd gladly look for another solution. This is my attempt at that solution.
Then, and I hear all of that. So we've got a policy in place in terms of graffiti, the cleanup, the garbage we've addressed with our administration, as well as the open door, so that's an ongoing issue. But in terms of the current status, that again, that would be the report coming back on the number that have been through the door, the programming that's available, the work that they're doing currently, and then the long-term solution or the long-term vision, again, has already been identified that they don't want to be in that building. We don't want them in that building, and the downtown area doesn't want that in their building. So the long-term goal and what they've been working towards with myself and administration is to secure funding to be someplace else. So I guess the part of the big picture here that I struggle with is that we already have all of this information, but you're asking administration to go and I don't know if it's, I'm missing what you're missing in terms of what the long-term vision is and what information you're looking to have come back from administration. Like we have that, we have the goal, this is what we're doing. Our goal is to not be in that building anymore, or is not to be in that building, the sooner the better. I'm just struggling with what information you're looking for, other than we're doing everything we can to try to secure funding to be someplace else.
I think each one of us have bits and pieces of information. I'm not sure that our community understands the long-term vision. Are we looking at a shelter? Are we looking at a full service? Are we looking at a detox center? Are we looking at a building that has permanent healthcare professionals providing service to a vulnerable population? Are we, how close are we to finding funding? Have we even got a location? Those are questions that I think, and even if the answer is no, we don't have the answers, those are the questions that our community is asking. And I'm at a loss. And anyway, so we're on opposite sides of the fence. There's two votes that will wipe each other out, and we'll see what happens with the rest of
Self-building.
What's the matter with this location? It's not just a building, it's not just a location. And to me, what goes on inside of those four walls to be more accessible to the community. It's what happens outside of those four walls to the problem to the community. So I'm not so convinced that it's a location problem, as it is outside the four walls problem that we need to address. I get to get an email from the residents or business owners
That was upset of what was going on and how that the open door is helping this population. What they're upset about is everything that goes around outside of it. And if it gets moved, if we don't address that same situation, we're just moving the problem. So I really think that we need to figure out the problems that are happening outside of those four walls. And we better do it quick. Because if we don't, we're going to have some very upset people, no matter where it's at. What the solution is, I guess we got 7 minds to get together and figure it out. But as far as what goes on inside the hub, I think that we could certainly do a better job of communicating that information to the residents and the business owners, and maybe this might help. So for that reason, I would support Councilor Newson's motion.
And I totally hear all of that and the issues that are going on outside of the hub. And as I had talked earlier, I reached out to a number of the businesses on the south end of the town. I've reached out to a number of businesses on the south end of town that were dealing with everything that's going on right now, and probably more so because of the shoplifting, the break and enters that they were experiencing prior to the hub opening aren't happening, or not nearly to the number that it was happening previous to the hub opening up. That all of a sudden, all of the issues that the downtown businesses and patrons of downtown are seeing right now were happening on the south end of town for decades. And I keep saying for decades, but it's been for decades. So Inspector Durant's, in his first go around being in Watasquan, one of the solutions was to arrest everybody. Everybody goes to jail, everybody goes to cells, and that worked for a minute, and then it didn't. And then it's a revolving door, and then it's no different than the drunk tank being a revolving door, people coming in and out of it. The hospital, the same thing, dealing with it. It's not a new issue. It's in a new area. The downtown businesses are experiencing everything that the south end had been experiencing all those years previous. And that in no means do I say that that's okay. I'm not saying that that's okay, that it's the same issue in a new area. If there was a way to solve the problem, we would have done it 20 years ago. Or if there was a way to solve the problem, or that problem, then every municipality who deals with a vulnerable population or those struggling with mental health and addictions would have had a solution to fix that, and we would have been riding coattails from another municipality. And I'm not saying that we don't need to continue to try to find a solution to it, but assigning our administration to do more research into something that I feel we have the answers for. We've got an agency in town that's doing the work to try to get it to a place where we don't have 240 people needing to find treatment, and we don't have people loitering outside because they don't have any other place to go. I'm struggling with circling back again to have another report back on the work that's currently being done, that we know is being done, and the direction that we want it to go into. So I think that while we continue to task our administration with all of the work, then I think part of this motion needs to be what isn't going to be looked after while they work on this. And then what, I don't know if it's a compensation or how we work with the open door, that they come back and report to us, or they're working with our administration, taking the time that they could be using on working with the individuals that are accessing the hub and their programming, how we work with them, or how we expect an outside agency to be putting time and money and effort into something that isn't their responsibility to be doing. They're here doing what we've asked them to be doing. They're securing funding well over 10 times the amount of money that not including the rental, actual cash that what the city has put up for the operation of that hub. I don't know how we direct our administration to put more work on the open door. Councilor Black.
I think that you and I looked at the motion differently, Tyler, because the way that I'm reading it is that we have administration help Open Door to create more communication. That way the community has better understanding of what's going on, because even when we went to do the hub tour, I found out a whole bunch of stuff that was going on in there that I had no idea about, and I was really impressed with. So I know that if I didn't know about it, the community probably doesn't know about it. And so I think that having that communication there helps, so that then we're better advocates for the hub, and that in that sense too, we're better advocates for the community. And I don't see having more communication as an issue. But I also don't see the portion where you're talking about asking administration to do more research, because that's not how I read this. I read this more as just developing communication with the open door, just so that then we can have a baseline of, hey, this is where we're at. This is what we're going to work towards. We're here for you, and this is what we're working towards.
So it's the long-term vision and benefits is the work that they're putting into it. And again, then asking them to work through the open door, who isn't working for the city of Wetaskiwin as an organization.
Mhm.
And that's fine, whether it's research or not, or whether it's more communication or not. I'm fairly certain that all of council can appreciate the amount of communication that's going out from the city as a whole. So again, what are we taking away from what we're communicating now to start working on this? Like we can't just keep pouring from the same bucket and expecting the same amount of work to be able to happen. So that's why I'm saying as part of this motion is, what are we not going to be doing going forward so that we can put this into it as well? Councilor Bronco.
Thank you. I'm also struggling because I'm getting confused every time. Basic principles, we gave them back in November, we gave them $90,000 for 1-year contract. We gave them a 2-year lease to be in that building. My colleague, Mr. Nielsen, has some good points. I just want to know, come November, what's anticipation of this council, if any of us are here or not? And are we renewing the $90,000? We can't renew the 2 years because we signed it as a municipality to give them 2 years to that building. I like to know how much money we're going to put forward to keep going. That's all I want to know. So does the taxpayer.
I've given them $90,000. They haven't asked for anything else.
I know, but that's coming up November.
Why is it coming up though?
Because we have a 1-year contract.
No.
No?
No, we have the agreement on the building. It's 2 years.
The agreement on the building, yes,
Yeah.
but the $90,000 cash
It was $90,000 to start the operating a 24-hour integrated.
for 1 year,
Period,
for 1 year.
period, period.
I'm sorry, I thought it was for 1 year.
No,
So this can go on and on after 2 years.
this hopefully goes on forever, or for as long as the need is in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hillgartner.
Basically, what's gonna happen with elections coming up in the new council, we've got to come up with some kind of an idea here, because if a new council gets voted in and they cancel Sol, this whole project is done.
Out of our control. So I don't, there would be no point in speculating what a new council is going to do. We've got a plan in place right now. What plan are you looking to have in place?
Well, I think what we're all trying to look around here is, what's the plan? Like, you keep on saying that we have this going, we got this going, we got this going. I think we're trying to find out do we have a date when some of this stuff is gonna be started, going through, and so forth?
Like what stuff?
Is there a date of moving to a bigger area?
So as they can secure funding.
Which is when
Whenever the provincial government hands it over. Or when we make a motion to allocate funding to do it ourselves.
or in the fall.
Or on the soul. Okay.
We have just gone through a fairly lengthy exercise relating to visioning for our community, branding for our community. And the purpose behind all of that is to sell the good things and the benefits this community can provide to its residents and potential businesses. We're selling our community. We're selling it to our current residents, we're selling it to potential businesses, and we're selling it to future residents of our city. And prior to this visioning, we also had safety as one of our high concerns for this council. And hence all the work that this council and yourself in particular have done in terms of soliciting funds for the RCMP. So we sold the government on a need for money for RCMP. We are spending resources to sell new businesses, new residents on this community. And we have an element, an organization in our community that the medical practitioners sold me on when I did a tour. And that is looking long-term at the benefits for the community. And I think we're speaking the same language. And you're sold on that based on all the information you have. All I'm saying is we've got a fair number of people in our community who need some selling. They need to understand what they're buying, what they're committing to. And if the hub is on our downtown core for the next 2 years, because we can sell the community on a long-term benefit to the community in a wide range of different ways, I see that as a win. And so I guess my intention, as I said before, is to put my sales hat on to say, I want to advocate for this because I see potential benefits for the community. I see potential benefits for those people right now in the downtown core who are struggling. I see benefits for them down the road. They don't. They see no benefits whatsoever at this point in time. And I think we have an obligation to either, as a group, say, this is a waste of our time, we're not selling it to our community, or we say that we're going to sell it, and we're going to sell it by showing them what the benefits of this could be to our community. And I agree with Dean. I think part of that is selling them on the fact that we're concerned about their safety, we're concerned about their businesses, we're concerned about vagrancy, we're concerned about graffiti, and we're going to do something about it. And you mentioned we've got actions in place in terms of policies regarding some of that. I think the RCMP plays a huge role in this. And I see us having to convince a large portion of our community is, hold your breath, folks. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's look at the long-term benefits that could accrue for our community and for you as residents in this community. And I see that being a communication piece. And again, I'm not looking, when I talk about this communication piece, I'm not talking about a 15-page report. I think the hub and city administration, with all due respect, and I don't mean to minimize this, could put this document together in a matter of a couple of hours that would satisfy, at least on some level, the curiosity within our community about where we're headed. And I think, like Dean said, I still think we, as a council, have to look at, if we recognize the issues that are happening outside the hub right now, we have done some things, we've spent some money. Has it solved all the problems? Absolutely not. So are we simply going to wash our hands and say, well, we did the best we could. Folks downtown, you're stuck with what you got. And And I'm not prepared to do that. I think we need to have more dialogue with the RCMP. I think we need to have more dialogue with bylaw. I think we have to have more dialogue amongst ourselves as to how much more money are we prepared to put in this to make this thing work successfully in our community. And I think we're naive to say, we're done spending, it's got to be somewhere else. And God, I'm sorry. If you want to advocate long-term for some real benefits for the community, then let's start talking about it. Let's start making a plan about how we're going to address safety down there, graffiti down there, the proliferation of garbage down there. And let the community know that we're committed to making this happen and we are hearing their concerns about the downtown core.
And I hear you loud and clear. What is it then that is now not a priority for administration to be working on to do that? And then what then is our commitment, compensation over and above what we're doing right now to the open door to be a part of that, to have that dialogue, to have that communication going out to the rest of the city?
I'm going to answer the question. Sorry, Dean, for butting in. I don't know what they're going to take off their plate. I think it's, if this is something that this group feels is important, and of course we haven't cast a ballot, so maybe it'll get tossed out. But if this is something that council thinks is important at this point in time, I would expect administration to say, here are the 5 things I need to drop to make this happen. And then we have to weigh off whether this is more important than the 3 or 4 things they want to drop from their list. But this is in front of us right now, and I think we need to address it.
I don't disagree with you at all. My concern is that while we've tasked our administration with everything that we've got going on,
I hear you.
I don't disagree with you, and I would love to see more communication coming from council and being the advocates on behalf of the city and the open door and the hub and like everything that goes along with it. It would be fantastic to have that kind of support and that kind of information going forward. I want to know how we're going to do that. And we had talked earlier about having a task force or having a committee that would come together that could work with and through the open door and the RCMP with administration. And so it's not just administration, so that it is council. So I would lean more towards, if that's what we're looking to do, and if we want to be there helping with the communication of this, then I would like to see council being a part of that, not just directing administration to bring a report back to council. Councilor Billingsley.
I was just going to say that it would be up to administration to let us know what is best for their town and what project. If we say, well, don't do the visioning project, well, that may be far more time take away than was actually necessary, whatever. So it'd be up, they'd be able to make that recommendation of if maybe they have an extra 15 minutes. And I have no idea how much time. As far as compensation back to open door, I think that like, I would hope that they would want to be good neighbors and a good partner with us. And maybe not, but I don't envision paying them for information and being a good neighbor.
I would argue that they've probably been pretty good neighbors and they do their own, they've got a open door with watasquan Facebook page where they share stuff on as well. So I don't, it's not that they're not willing to have the communication. It's again, if they came in here with the idea that we saw just under 100 different people and between 15 and 20 people a night accessing the emergency shelter to seeing upwards of 60 people and now 2.5 times the number of people overall in the first 5 months. It's not a matter of whether they are just being a good neighbor or something they can just do on the side. It's if you want this to work and you want this to run properly, then let's make it work and let's make it run properly then. If we're going, like, if you're gonna start with offering direction or giving direction to an agency operating inside of our city, that this is what you're going to do now. I don't know that that's fair. I don't know that you could go to the Salvation Army or another entity in town and say, be a good neighbor and offer us your communication as we're going forward.
So we gave open door free rent that they were at the beginning, were prepared to pay for.
Absolutely, to operate,
So
because, and which is, absolutely. So they were willing to purchase the building and weren't able to. So we had no other place for it to go. So again, they're doing the work for the city. And in turn, we're giving them rent on a building for up to 2 years, depending on whether we decide to end a SOL or get out of the agreement. So as an organization, and they have the uncertainty of whether or not they're going to be in existence in a week or 2 weeks or 3 months or whatever it happens to be if we end this agreement, whether you're being a good neighbor or not, you're fighting for your life to just maintain operation, let alone having any kind of certainty that this is something that's going to happen, because this isn't the first time that, and not that it's a threat, but it's not the first time that there's been a discussion on, well, when do we end the SOL, or when do we, how do we get out of the agreement? At what point are we operating as a good neighbor and trying to make things as easy as possible, as opposed to what would feel like probably roadblocks every couple of months, coming back to council, having the same discussion about the operation.
So I guess I'd like to talk about a little bit then about us being good neighbors. That I think that we need to come up with a different plan of what's going on outside those four walls. And what that looks like, I really don't know. But what's going on now isn't working. We've all seen it. We've all had emails. We've all had phone calls. We've all had coffee shop talk. We need to do something different, because what's going on isn't working very well outside of the four walls.
I agree. So then whose responsibility is it for somebody who is drinking out in public?
Well, the person drinking himself.
Right. And then the person that drives by and either sees it or has witnessed it to make that complaint. It's no different than if I were sitting in a park drinking and somebody saw me there, like they would have to make the complaint. And I just like, what is it that
But it's constantly going on, whereas if I drive by a park bench by Montgomery Park, it'd be very rare for me to see someone drink.
Absolutely.
Very rare.
Absolutely.
Never.
Just
However,
whose
I would see-
responsibility is it then while somebody's drinking outside of the civic building?
But we
And then
know,
how do we address it?
but we all know that it's happening.
Absolutely it is, but how do you mitigate that? How are you stopping somebody from drinking outside of a building? Regardless of where it is.
That tells me that there probably needs to be more patrolling of what's going on.
So we increased funding for RCMP patrols.
Is it enough?
I don't know. Obviously not if there's still an issue going on. So then the motions coming after this would be to increase security in the area, whether we hire a security company or we allocate more money to the RCMP to increase patrols, or I guess those would be the only two if we're going to do anything, is that you hire a security company to sit there and monitor what's going on, or you increase the funding for RCMP to increase their patrols.
Because we're losing FCSS out of security. I mean, there's dollars that the city is going to be losing because they're going to be renting somewhere else. I guess we could deal with this, but I still think we need to deal with what's going on outside the four walls.
I don't disagree. And this is like the entire problem that we've been having in the city is exactly why we have the agency in town offering the programming that we do, because it's been an issue forever. I'm way off track. Sue,
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if administration could take that motion away and come up with all of the things you've talked about, like what we would need to put aside and other stuff and report back at the next meeting? Or is that too late?
Let's have a special.
we don't have an option. We can't give you something to do and then.
We need like 6:30.
I mean, realistically, we can't give you direction and then have you not do something that hasn't been directed by council either. Keith? Yeah.
Just to address Constable Nielsen's motion, I think, if I can speak candidly, I think we missed a little bit of a comms piece here when we brought the hub back into the location in the downtown core. Some of that was mitigated, was aggravated because of COVID and things like that were underway at the time. If I could offer a suggestion, I've already discussed this with Ms. Hutton, that myself, Ms. Hutton, and perhaps a member of council, if they're willing to do that, or administration, is willing to meet with the Chamber of Commerce. This is the key player in the downtown core that I believe we may have missed in the comms piece of moving this whole project forward way back at the beginning. I think it's getting to what Mr. Nielsen was trying to get at as far as we have to get back in touch with the people that are concerned the most about what's happening in the downtown core. I think if they hear it directly from myself with regards to the crime stats, what we're seeing, what we're doing, what we have done, what's working, what's not working, as well as Ms. Hutton being able to provide her presentation to the Chamber of Commerce and to the Downtown Business Association, I don't know if they're one and the same, would help to put that information piece, I think is what Mr. Nielsen was trying to get to, on what the long-term effects of this program is, what the concerns are moving forward that everybody has. I don't want to say administration should do it or I should do it. I can do this. I've already talked to Ms. Hutton. We're willing to meet with the Chamber of Commerce, provide our side of the story, give them the long-term story and the long-term strategy of where we want to go with this program. The next piece we can come back and we can then say, report back to council to say, this is what the recurrent concerns were. I'm sure you guys have heard the concerns in the letters and emails that you've received. I think we missed a piece there. I think we can go back. I'm more than willing to do that. And that might meet what Mr. Nielsen is looking for as far as getting the information. And then we can put something out in the media or something like that. As far as getting a group of council together to try and, what do we do next on trying to expedite the movement of the hub and those other things that we talked about earlier. I think that comm strategy that comes out of that group can also be fed back through the chamber. It's a suggestion. I don't know if it meets the needs of Mr. Nielsen, but I'll just give you that piece as something to work towards. If you'd like to move that forward, I can get that done.
Okay. Yeah, and I absolutely take the responsibility on the communication piece prior to. Councilor Nielsen, does that?
So I think it would help. Sure, I think it would help. But what we're talking about here is that we're going to be giving information out into silos. We'll give a little bit of information to the chamber, the downtown core. I get it. That would be beneficial. But that group of people gets informed. Maybe not everybody gets informed, but they're informed and we're informed. And people at the coffee shop are sort of informed. That's my worry. And what my worry is timeliness. I suspect every one of us are going to be getting a phone call the next day or so saying, so what happened? And what's happening? And what's happening is we can meet with the Chamber of Commerce and downtown business groups, and we'll put together a task force that's going to work directly with Open Door and the RCMP. And the next question is what's going to happen with the vagrancy or the graffiti or the whatever else? And Dean's response will be,
So continue to call the RCMP or the CPOs when you see there's a problem. Or if the next motion up is that council allocates X number of dollars to hire a security firm to sit outside of the hub. Or council that, and then council allocates X number of dollars to purchase the actual trailers to have the hub moved. And then you have definitive timelines in terms of actions that are being taken and when something will be changed in terms of the hub being moved. So I'm sorry, I keep taking us way off track. Councillor Hilgertner. Sorry, Councillor Lonsdale, then Councillor Hilgertner.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to say, especially the people that took the tour of the open door, we got a really good look at what their long-term vision is and the benefits for our community. We get updates quite often, and I think the 7 of us especially can be part of that communication to our community. Now, in a total agreement with Councillor Billingsley, in 99.9% of emails and phone calls I get, there isn't a problem with what happens inside the walls. It is outside. That's what we have to try to take care of. And that's what is getting the community up in arms. Very, very few have ever told me that they don't want it here. Now, they see it themselves, they're in the wrong spot. Everybody knows that. And I think we just have to figure out a vision with this, but we can be the voices of the community as well. So
We have to.
With the information that we get, we just have to relay that and keep our community involved.
Yep. Councillor
Thank you. I still think Councilor Nielsen's on the right course. Might not be just worded correct.
what?
Because just as the presentation that we did get from the hub of the treatments, the number of treatments that they're doing now, and the number of treatments if they had a bigger facility that they could be doing, that number really scares me of what's going to happen. Like, it's great that that's the number of people that's going to get treated, but it also scares me the bigger picture of what happens outside of the facility. And if Councillor Nielsen's, if that's in there, I'm in total favor of it, because we have to look forward of down the road of the growth of and what the problem is going to be.
So just for clarification, Councillor Nielsen, can you, through your motion, what is it that you're exactly looking for?
I guess I'd like to create 2 messages. One is a good news story. And I think the information we received today through the presentation is just that. I don't think you need to inundate people with stats and percentages and 6 out of 42 and all the rest of it, but I think there's a good news story there. I think the other message is here's what we're hoping for our community. And the open door is the door to those long-term benefits and identify those benefits. We haven't talked about a new building. We haven't talked about new positions potentially being in town. We haven't talked about nurses coming in to provide supports. We haven't talked about employment opportunities that could be generated from this kind of a thing. But that's all part of the good news story. And I think we need to let our community know that we are all concerned about the issues that have spilled out of the building and the problems and the pressures and the fears that it's created in our community. I think we need to verbalize it and recognize it and state it. And let them know that we are going to be working more specifically on a plan. I don't know what that looks like. To address the stuff outside that's creating community angst. What that would actually look like, Tyler, I can't spell it out for you. That would be the vision I would have for that kind of a communication. A good news story, a visioning story about what's going to be or could be, and how it could really impact our community in a positive way, and that your concerns have been heard. We recognize them as real, and we will continue to work to resolve those problems for the benefit of the entire community and the vulnerable population that the open door is serving. I'm not sure that answers your question.
Kind of. Aside from, yeah. Good. Aside from the potential of what that new space might look like, which we have no idea because we're at the mercy of other orders of government, I guess I'm missing the fact that all of that information, aside from any new stats that we have now, hasn't already been shared. So do we need to do a better job of having one communication point to share that information so that everybody's getting the same information? Or I don't know, how do we better communicate so that we're not getting a paragraph here and there, or like, yeah. Okay.
Sue has a question.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, do you want to put a date to it? But Sue.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, in listening to the discussions today, my fear in the direction that we're going is that it's not going to satisfy the people who are fearful. And so I wonder if the proposal that Keith gave actually addresses that a little bit better. We are in a roundabout way already addressing some of those things that you've already talked about. Jessica's talked about it. Communications, the visioning, Paul's community safety plan. We're looking at a lot of that could tap into that for sure. But if you're looking for something immediate now to address the concerns of the downtown businesses or the patrons who feel that their safety is at risk, I wonder if Keith's proposal isn't the best route right now. Just throwing it out there.
Thank you.
Keith, once, if that's a plan that you have going forward, you've met through the chamber with the open door, through yourselves, what were you envisioning in terms of how are you sharing that information? Is that just coming back to the city or?
Yeah, we can get some feedback from the chamber on, and it's going to be, I would suggest it's going to be kind of echoing what you guys have already heard from some of the constituents and the business owners in the downtown core. I don't think they've heard, and it just anecdotally, when this whole hub shelter thing started, some of our members were going, "Oh, what are we doing? And this doesn't, well, really, we're catering, we're doing this, we're doing that." And we had a few naysayers inside the detachment. As soon as Jessica came in and told her story about what's happening, their plan, the agencies that were involved, the number of doctors she had, the programming that was ongoing, it turned them around, just like you guys, I think, got turned around when you actually visited the program. So, and I think we missed that window with that group. And I think it would have been, cats out of the barn now, but I think we go back, talk to that particular group. We are able to give them the feedback with regards to, and I won't bury them in stats. I'll speak candidly with them. I think if we do that, at least we're going to hit those people that we're going to be able to. There's some people we're going to be able to change their mind, and there's other people we're not going to be able to change their mind. And I think we need to get in touch with those ones that we can change their mind on. And there's always going to be that group of 2, 3, 4 businesses that just they've made up their mind. They've been here a long time, and this is my opinion, and I'm not going to change. That's fine. The next piece is if there's another half a dozen out there that we can convince and to see and to tell them the story so that they are fully informed on what's going on, and then go from there. And I agree with Mr. Nielsen. It just can't stop there. The next piece is, perhaps we get in touch with the local newspaper and we do a story on the fact that we went to the chamber and we said this, and we tell the story again, but in some different terminology and that sort of stuff. But I think if I'm more than willing. Jessica's already texted me back saying, absolutely, yeah, I'm in, let's go. We're willing to do that and go from there. Perfect.
Can that be step 1, Councillor Nielsen?
To me, that's step 2. But I believe we need timely communication. I think timely communication is 3 days from today. I don't disagree with what's being proposed.
And I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I'm still concerned about our administration. That's my.
And I am too, but I'm also concerned about our public.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm in no way dismissing that.
And I think and again, we'll cast the ballots and we'll see. I mean, I could lose this motion 6-1. It's a slam dunk and away we go. But at the same time, if this motion passes 6-1, then there's a message from this council to administration. This is a high priority that needs to be talked about. And we feel that perhaps something needs to be taken off the plate to put this on the plate because this is a high priority. So I guess it's a question of at this level, where do we see this as a priority in our community? And I'm a big boy, and if I take a kick in the pants and lose this particular motion, I can
put it
quite happily move on and carry on from there.
If you're looking for information back from the administration, can you put a date to it so that if that's your expectation?
Sure, I'll put a time frame on it. You all set, Karen? A week from today, that there's a communication that goes out to the public. Whatever the calendar says.
Anything further? Ready for the question, all in favor? Carried.
Can I make a motion?
We are getting back to, I don't know.
Tax bylaw makes
I'd like to have a little bit of discussion, Kevin. So regarding the hub, but this security consent.
If you, what is it? An added agenda item, 2/3 consent after the agenda has been approved. So if you're adding an agenda item, then that would be the case.
Okay, I would like to add, make a motion, I don't know how you want to word this. Yeah.
No, we just close that out with the motion.
In regards to dealing with security around the integrated hub. So, Pete.
8H.
Yep.
All right, 7. Yeah. Just waiting for Gabby to come back. Well, she's not here for it. Okay, added agenda item 8H will be security at the hub. Added to it. Those in favor? Perfect. It has been added. 7D, tax rate bylaw 1993-21.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before Diana gets up here and discusses what the tax rate bylaw is, I did have a couple of questions or some clarifications that were needed. So I just want to reiterate with everybody that the city's budget did not go up. So we are not asking for more money from our citizens. The tax rate and how it's calculated is the city's budget that is divided by the entire city's assessed value that is taxable to come up with the tax rate. So even though the assessed values have gone down, the tax rate will go up. We are not asking for more money. So I just wanted to be clear about that before Diana comes and talks about the tax rate bylaw.
She's buttering us up. She's buttering us up.
Hand delivered tax bills. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm short, not that short. I put together a PowerPoint presentation this evening just to go through the points and so forth with respect to the tax rate bylaw. I can hold it if it's a problem. There. Tell I used to teach, but I can't sing. So what I want to do is just basically unveiling the mystery. I think that's what I said, or unraveling the mystery. So in terms of acknowledgements, I'd like to acknowledge my team cohorts, Candace, the acting general manager of corporate services, as well as Barb Maggio, the taxation administration contractor that we have hired at this point in time. They both worked extensively on this. I'm just primarily the deliverer. And, you know, we've put together, I think, a really good package and a lot of information for council that hopefully will help explain what's going on. So to begin with, council's responsibility is the adoption of an annual operating and capital budget for the 2021 year. You did that on March 8th of 2021.
And then your responsibility also is to pass the property tax bylaw annually. So administration is presenting the draft 2021 tax rate bylaw for council's consideration. This bylaw has been prepared to meet the requirements of the Municipal Government Act, the approved 2021 operating budget and capital plan, as well as the various requisitions from the school, the seniors housing, and the designated industrial properties. Oh, I can't read that. Yeah, my eyes are not that good. But basically what this graph shows is the City of Watasquan assessment for the 2021 tax year, and that's based on July of 2020. So, well, thank you. So basically what this shows is what's happened to the taxes, or to the assessment, pardon me, in the City of Watasquan. If you can just go to the next one, then I'll be able to explain as well. So there was a slight decrease in the farmland, and that was due simply to the fact that that portion was farm buildings that were being showed as farmland. So it's all it is a reclassification of that component of the buildings into residential. So that was why, because normally you wouldn't see a decrease in farmland unless farmland was redesignated for a different purpose or a different use. The significant growth, hang on, this one's easier, in the non-res can be contributed primarily to two main properties. I think you know who they are. They had some very significant development on two properties there. So that's where the 7 million plus comes in. And the we saw a slight increase in physical growth in residential properties. However, although it appears to be a significant decrease in the market value of residential properties, in other words, the $33 million, it's not. It's in line with what's happened with other municipalities. So for example, I have information on some other municipalities in the area, such as City of Beaumont. They were down 2.7% in their market value, okay? City of Spruce Grove, 4.2% down in their market value. City of Leduc, 3.1%. Same with town of St. Paul and Bonneview. They were 2.4 and 2.7%. Decrease in market assessment. I have no idea why that would happen, because again, as you're looking around, housing sales seem to be moving fairly quickly, so the demand must be there. But why the market is so much lower from 2019 to 2020, I don't know that anyone really has the answer to that, other than I suspect by now there is, in some of the communities in any event, a recoup of that market loss, if you will. But that's what's happened, so that's what we're going to be working with. I think that's okay. So in the 2021 budget, administration included a 1% increase in tax revenues due to physical growth, okay? I've provided you with a spreadsheet that actually shows, based on the based on the 2020 tax rate, if you multiply that rate by your physical growth, what the estimated amount of increase in tax revenue is. And that was approximately $162,000. And that was, I believe, do I show which attachment? Yeah, the second attachment. So administration did include in the budget an appropriate estimate of what the tax revenue increase would be from physical growth in assessment. And you should be taxing that because you have to service that physical growth. So you're going to now have to, add policing and fire protection and everything else for the physical growth, whether it was in the residential or in the industrial area. So that should be added into your, oh, perfect, thank you, should be added into your annual budget. So the 2020 tax requirement was $15,881,126, and that's as per your bylaw, 1961-20. We've included a copy of that bylaw as well for your reference. So the 1% increase on that is equivalent to 158,811. Based on the second attachment, the estimated increase, as I said, in the physical growth was 162. So right in line, you know, plus or minus $4,000 is not going to break the bank, so to speak. So when you change this, it changes here. Excellent. Uh-oh, what arrow? See, I'm old school here. Okay. So the draft 2021 tax rate bylaw, as per the approved 2021 budget, the estimated municipal revenues from all sources was $41,939,000. The estimated revenues from all sources other than taxes is $25,901,000. Taxes raised by local improvement levies are $17,240. Now, they're obviously going to go up with the passing of the two local improvement bylaws that you're looking at. So those levies will increase moving forward. Therefore, the estimated amount of the raised by general, or the amount to be raised by general municipal taxation is $16,020,760. Which arrow did she? Sorry, I didn't watch her. That one, perfect. I don't know. So in addition to preparing the draft 2021 tax rate bylaw to levy municipal taxes in the amount of $16,020,000, administration has also prepared the draft bylaw to include the school seniors foundation and designated industrial property requisitions, which is a requirement of the MGA. As demonstrated by the historical mill rates attached, it's your first attachment, administration has also prepared the draft 2021 tax rate bylaw, maintaining the 2-to-1 ratio between the non-residential and residential properties. I remember when I was here originally that there was discussion regarding that. So the estimated tax revenues generated from the residential properties is $9,425,814. Whereas the estimated tax revenues generated from the non-residential properties will be $6,594,946. The average assessed value of a residential property is determined, we determine it by dividing the residential assessment by the number of residential properties. And for the 2021 residential property assessed value in the city of Watasquan, the average is $238,000. So properties with a 2021 assessment value of $238,000 will experience the following. What you'll see, what we did is we took a property that had the assessed value of $238,000 and we looked at what their assessed value was in 2020. The assessed value in 2020 was $245,940. So this particular property has seen a decrease in the market value of their property. When we apply the 2020 and the 2021 tax rates and look at the municipal, and this is just the municipal portion, this particular property is going to experience a $7.83 decrease, which is approximately right, because this again is an average property, so this property shouldn't really see a significant increase and or decrease. And $7 is a cup of coffee today, right? At the April 14th, 2020 meeting of Council, Council passed bylaw number 195820, naming the tax penalty bylaw. We've provided a copy for your reference as well. Subsequently, at the April 27th, 2020 meeting, Council passed the 2020 property tax bylaw. We've also attached a copy. And in 2020, with the approval of the second bylaw, because of the impact of COVID-19 within the city, Council established a penalty on current taxes, which were the 2020 current levy, as of October 1st of 5%, and a further penalty on tax arrears on January 1st, 2021 of 10%. This significantly decreased the amount of tax penalties that council levied in the city in 2020. So the city's tax penalty bylaw, which is 1958-20, which is currently in effect, outlines a penalty on current taxes outstanding of 9% on July 1 of 2021, a further penalty of 6% on October 1st of 2021, as well as the penalty on arrears on January 1st of 2022 of 15%. So at this point, what administration is looking for is confirmation that council does not want to direct any changes to the tax penalty bylaw at this time. If council did choose or would like to make any changes to the tax penalty bylaw, administration would recommend that you would adjust the schedule that's attached to your tax penalty bylaw 1950-20. And that's, again, something that administration would like to know from council. If there's not to be any changes, then that's fine. It's the current tax penalty bylaw is in effect. And that's basically the way, and Sue has indicated how the tax rates are calculated. We have provided you with the draft copy of the tax rate bylaw, which outlines what the tax rate will be. You've been provided with an example of the impact of the changes in the tax rate bylaw. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to see if I can answer them.
You're not paying that. Jeez. Councilor Billingsley.
Actually, the question's actually going to be to us. The question is, looking at this lovely assessment kind of thing, I'd like to know if the number on your 2021, if you guys want to take a look at that, take a look at your number there. Would you be able to sell your house for anything less or more than that number?
I would say it's probably accurate for me.
It's accurate for you?
Looking at me?
Yep.
Because this is the one by your place.
Is your number high or low? Would you be able to sell
my house for that?
Would you sell it for that?
Never.
Is it low or high?
I'm not telling you. I would say almost. I wouldn't sell for that. 2.5 times more.
I'm sorry?
I would say my house is 2.5 times more than that.
Okay.
I'm not saying I'll pay.
No, that's fine. Kevin?
I think mine's accurate.
Yours is accurate? You'd be able to, you wouldn't be able to sell it for more or less than that amount?
No, I think it's fair.
Fair enough. Alan?
My business is too high, my house is too low.
I would say that I wouldn't like to sell it for this much, but it's probably accurate.
Yeah, mine's definitely on the low side. I'm just concerned of the actual assessments that have been done over the, and it's more of an exercise for administration to, that it's, in my opinion.
Yeah. And so in terms of the assessments are done, as I said, effective July 2020. The assessment notices now have gone out to your public. They were mailed out by the end of February, and they have until May 21st of this year to appeal their assessment. So if you want to appeal your assessment, by all means you can. The assessor would be more than happy to have another look at your house and reassess it higher.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Right? So that's generally not the issue. Correct. In terms of the assessed value. And it's based on market at July of 2020. And you're probably right. You could probably get more for it.
Oh, but having it low affects everybody else.
Right, but it's all relative. Well, and so what will, the way that the assessment works is that they'll look at your property, and I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say you've got a two-story, 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home, fully developed, okay? Double attached garage. So your value as well as the guy that lives across town who has a 2-story, 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home with a double attached garage, the assessed values will be similar. And they will be based on market statistics that they've received. So assessors, what they do is they get the market. So if there were houses in Watasquan that were sold that were 2-story, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms with a detached garage, and if they were sold in that year, they would use that market value to assess similar properties. And that's the way that the assessment does. Now, assessments are also reviewed by the province. So they're all submitted into the province, into Camelot, and they are reviewed, and basically they have a plus or minus 5% that they're able to, get, I guess basically give them some leeway in terms of what the assessed values are. But that's done across the province. It's done that way in every community, and your community is assessed no different than all the other communities in the province.
But my neighbor that's got that same house as mine, over the last 5 years, has spent $75,000 on renovating it.
Mm-hmm. And if we don't have permits to advise us that that was done, then there's no way for the assessor to know that that was done and therefore to reassess that home. Or alternatively, assessors are required to do 1/5 of the assessment within a community every 5 years, so that in the course of 5 years, they will have either physically gone into the home or done an external type of assessment to see whether or not there was an addition or if they could tell if there was any development. Oftentimes, especially now with COVID, I don't believe that they're doing that they're actually going into homes, but that is the only way that they can determine whether or not there have been improvements put in. And again, hopefully with permitting, they'd be able to catch some of that as well.
So, and this question would actually be directed then to Sue. Over the last 5 years, has the company that we've used to do the assessments gone into houses?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, they have not. The last time they reported to us, they did 1/5 of the city in drive-bys and then compared to development permit data.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Through the chair to Sue, but we've asked for a review or at least a recontemplation of contract related to our assessor. I mean, that was on the books almost a year ago. So the status of that, I guess I'm curious about, especially given we've done a bunch of drive-bys being the basis upon which assessments are done.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, the RFP is ready to go. We will need to wait until the appeal period is done, and then our assessor group knows that we will be putting that out.
And through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, perhaps I gave you the wrong example on your property.
I'm sorry?
Perhaps I gave you the wrong example. So if you like, I can double check.
That's fine.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. I think you're doing a great job. I like this. I'll keep on doing a good job.
Oh, thank you very much. So if there are no further questions, administration is recommending that council provide first and second reading to bylaw 1993-21, the 2021 tax rate bylaw. And council also has the option of providing third and final reading to the bylaw at your discretion. So council's approval of a tax rate bylaw will provide the chief administrative officer with the authority to levy taxes to generate the revenues required to continue to provide high-quality services to its residents while addressing both the current and future capital needs of the community.
Councillor Billingsley.
I move that City Council give first reading to bylaw 1993-21 cited as the 2021 tax rate bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried.
I move that City Council give second reading to bylaw 1993-21 cited the 2021 tax rate bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried.
Move that City Council give unanimous consent to third reading of bylaw 1993-21 cited as the 2021 tax rate bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor?
I did have a.
Oh, sorry. I saw hands go up and I thought
Sorry.
you were voting ahead.
So as a council, the one thing that we could do is take a look at the ratio, and are we comfortable with that? If that keeps where we'd like to be, and if that's the case, okay.
I possibly for another day of discussion. Currently, the city of Wetaskiwin does not tax M&E, machinery and equipment. So that is something that as well, at some point, you may want to have a discussion as to whether or not you want to be taxing that.
Just to ask Candace.
Pardon me?
Just to ask Candace.
Councillor Nielsen, were you voting or I have a question? Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
I move that City Council gives third and final reading to bylaw 1993-21 as the 2021 tax rate bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
this is my second last day, so it's been a pleasure again to work with the city of Wetaskiwin. Did you enjoy the movie?
Did I what?
Enjoy the movie.
I did, yes, thank you. My first comment was going to be thank you very much, and we appreciate all of the help that you came in and did for the city again. And the second one was going to be thank you very much. It was.
You should have told us that earlier because we would have defeated this to keep you on.
That's right.
If you would have defeated it, this wouldn't have been her second to last day. This would have been her last day. Thank you. Okay, we're going to recess, break, call it whatever you want, at 18:17. Back on track.
Oh, my battery's dead.
Welcome back. Item 70, pawn shop, second dealer, and scrap metal dealer bylaw 1994-21.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. So the purpose of this bylaw is we're doing a review of the current bylaw, and we're recommending that we update the current pawn shop bylaw to include both secondhand dealers, scrap dealers, as well as the reporting requirements for pawn shops. Through some review, they found that the current bylaw 1293-94 and its amendment were no longer adequate to address some regulations for reporting requirements that we would like to see from pawn shops, secondhand dealers, and scrap metal dealers. While the current bylaw does require the pawn shop businesses to keep a record of the purchases and the sale of goods and articles, it has no requirements for how these dealers forward this information electronically to law enforcement. So to alleviate this issue, enforcement and RCMP worked together in conducting some research to assess what software was out there but that was used by other municipalities currently in regards to electronic reporting from pawn shops and the scrap dealers and secondhand. Through that, we found the Business Watch International, called the Regional Automated Property Information Database, or that's named RAPID, was the business of choice for most municipalities in regards to the way it uploads their daily transactions, end-of-day transactions, into a database that could be utilized by law enforcement in regards to property crimes, in regards to our items that were pawned. The most recent agency to actually come on board with this is actually the government of Alberta. When they implemented their new Scrap Metal Dealers and Recycler Identification Act, they mandated that all those dealers report to this BWI rapid system. Now, with the implementation of any software, obviously that comes with some costs. So with BWI, we have recognized that there is a yearly licensing fee as well as a fee that they charge per transaction. So in regards to this, the Enforcement Services came to council on May 27th, 2019 with a PowerPoint from BWI, which is one of your attachments that BWI presented in regards to what their software is capable of doing, what reporting analytics it has to the RCMP in regards to items pawned. After that, there was an initial stakeholder consult meeting on June 7th, 2019 with the business owners, a total of 7 that attended, City of Watasquan representatives and the RCMP. After that stakeholder meeting, they sent out a survey on July 19, 2019 to the business owners in regards to how they collected information in regards to items pawned. In late 2019, a member of the Enforcement Service that was leading the pawn shop review left, resulting in a delay of the project due to adequate staff capacity. We started again in the fall of 2020 in regards to a second survey that was sent out December 9th, 2020 in an online form just to collect the same information that was collected July 9th, 2019 to confirm that it was exactly the same as previously reported to Enforcement Services. We then held a virtual meeting on February 5th, 2021 with the business owners. A total of 5 attended out of the 7 with, again, city representatives, RCMP, Enforcement Services. Through that meeting, some concerns were identified, so we had another meeting on March 18th with the actual BWI's software, again, virtual. We had 4 businesses attend in regards to the rapid system to hopefully answer some of their questions in regards to the BDI system. Now, some of the concerns identified were obviously costs that were being pushed on to the business owners. There was concerns with the BWI rapid software being outdated. There was concerns of security with personal information being transferred over the internet. There was concerns of protecting the privacy of their customers. And the 5th major concern was that the pawn shops themselves would be out the cost when stolen items were seized by the RCMP based on the software and no ability to recover the costs from the person who pawned the item. So we reviewed all these concerns. In regards to cost, Keith and myself have offered to pay for the software licensing for the first year for the business owners so they can get on board. We'll pay for that. As well as we did make a deal with BWI that for the first 5 years, they will not charge any transaction fees to the business owners for the first 5 years. In regards to the software being outdated, based on our meeting on March 18th, 2021, BWI did admit that their software was originally brought out back when DOS and Windows 3.1 were first coming out, and in August, approximately August of 2021, we'll be doing an entire update to their system to be operated on any platform that is currently out there, so Windows, Google, Chrome, all that stuff. In regards to security issues with it being transferred over the internet, through that meeting on March 18th, they explained what their servers, where they're held. They're held in Vancouver, and of their security, it's exactly the same security that I actually offer on our records management system currently right now, the security that we have. So they have the same security software that I have on my reporting system for keeping personal information safe. As far as protecting the privacy of the customers, we did get some concerns with that. We did actually get a document, and this is to the Private Commissioner of Alberta, that was filed in 2009, where they did exactly bring up BWI and a gentleman from Edmonton, and it was found that there was no concerns for privacy because it was based on law enforcement use only. It wasn't to be public knowledge. So that was defeated back in 2009. And then the only other last one that is obviously is the cost of them being out stolen items. Unfortunately, yes, they do take stolen items in pawn shops. They try to mitigate it as best they can through their knowledge. But yes, unfortunately, when an RCMP officer does seize that item, they're out the money because it's stolen and it's going to be returned to the rightful owner. And there is no process right now in Canada that I know of, and Keith can speak more to that, that for the business owners to recover that cost back from the accused. So those are some of the questions. Basically, the recommendation is that we give first and possibly second reading to this, and then to delay third reading for about 60 to 90 days, just so that if approved by council, that we can give the opportunity to train and get the businesses on board with this software before the third reading goes through. And I'll just take any questions.
Councillor Blatz.
I move that City Council approve first reading of bylaw 1994-21 being the pawn shop, secondhand dealer, and scrap metal dealer bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any discussion? Councillor Hillgartner and then Councillor Bronco.
So regarding the scrap metal dealers, so this will curb all the catalytic converters, like that'll track those down. Those will have to be reported in and so forth. Like, is that how we're going to curb this one? for
Yeah,
them?
and to echo what Sergeant Yeager just said, the province has already mandated, they've put out a provincial act here a year ago, November, with regards to scrap metal dealers throughout the province. It's a provincial mandated, it's along the same line as what we're trying to do here, but it just handles with just dealing with scrap metal. So like you say, catalytic converters, copper wire, copper pipe, all those types of things. And there's a registration process that they have to go through if they're going to be selling these scrap metal at any scrap metal dealer. There's a significant amount of personal information that they have to upload to BWI for tracking purposes.
For tracking. Okay.
Good. Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. To Keith, put me through the process. So a guy comes into the pawn shop. What is it? He's bringing his stereo system, if it's hot or not. Is he providing ID, or can somebody? What if they don't have IDs? Some people don't have driver's license. People walk in. Some people want money for their taxi to drive home.
Yeah, what we've established in the bylaw and what we've written, the bylaw that was written is one that we received from another community that was using the BWI system. The bylaw actually doesn't say we will use BWI. The way it's written is it is up to myself and Sergeant Yeager to determine the electronic database that we will be moving towards. We're saying to them up front, we're going to go with BWI. The pawn shop dealers know BWI. It's in Edmonton. All the pawn shops in Edmonton are using it. And there are other pawn shops inside the province that are all linked through BWI. So to run through the process very quickly, they have to show a piece of government ID, be a driver's license, a band card, a picture ID with their name, address, and their particulars on it. They are then, that information is then held in the database, and they then bring an item in that they want to pawn. At the time of the pawn or at the sale, the pawn shop dealer has to take descriptors of the item. So if it's a Panasonic Ghetto Blaster 2 cassette reel, I'm dating myself here, item that's silver in color and the serial number is whatever, then that's uploaded to the system. They also take a picture of the item, right? At the time of the pawn, they should be taking a picture of the person that's pawning it too. But if they've got their ID in their hand, that's somewhat of a moot point, because most of the pawners are return clients. That item is then put into the system. At that particular point, once that pawn has been established and that information is in the system, there is a police-only access porthole into the BWI system. The police officer at the time can search that database for the Panasonic cassette recorder. He doesn't even have to have the serial number. In a small area like here, if we were looking for, say, example, a Skill chainsaw, you can go Skill chainsaw and it'll tell you all the Skill chainsaws that have been pawned in Watasquan from a date range. If I wanted to know all the ones that were pawned for the whole year, I could put the date range in. It'll tell me all the Skills chainsaws that were pawned in the community at that time. It'll also tell me of all the people who pawned those items. So if you had a Skill chainsaw with a blue handle, unique, those are put in the descriptors. I put Skill chainsaw orange between this date and this date. I look in the picture, one's got a blue handle. We have now identified that piece of equipment. We can then go to the pawn shop, we'll seize that item, we'll get the information from BWI on who pawned that item, and we can now proceed with a charge of possession of stolen property for the person who pawned that item. And we can move that investigation forward. The database is very robust. You can query items by color, just common name. You can do it by serial number. You can also, in this database, if I had a significant prolific offender, for example, and I suspected that he was involved in a couple of B&Es, I can go into BWI and say, has this suspect pawned any items? I can then search all the items that he has pawned over, say, the last 2 weeks. And I can then go and look through the items to see if the items that were stolen in the B&E or stolen from a vehicle are in that item. So there's different ways in which we can do our investigations at that particular time. For the most part, we just carry on our business until such time as we have a break and enter, and now we're looking for stolen property. The member logs into the system, looks for the property. If he can find the property, they move the investigation forward. If they can't find the property, they'll move on without that piece of investigative aid.
So that's always fine if the owner of the pawn shop knows it's a hot item and registers, but if it doesn't register, there's nothing you can do to that.
Answer that.
So yeah, so part of our partnership with the RCMP is that CPOs will be tasked, or by law enforcement will do spot checks, right? We'll take our mobile terminals, walk in the store, pick an item on the shelf, search it, and if it's not in the system, we'll go, why is that not in the system? So there will be spot checks done, just random spot checks, just to confirm that they are putting that stuff in there.
So right now, right now you have paperwork, correct? They're supposed to. How often you go in and pick up the paperwork? I know they're supposed to do that daily, register and everything. So but they must have a receipt because they got to give the guy a receipt. So how often you go right now into the pawn shop to collect your information right now?
Currently, they only do it on a case-by-case basis if they get it.
So if you get a complaint, otherwise.
Yeah. Because and I can only speak to my current knowledge. It was done before my time, so even before 2010. They were doing that. A CPO was actually, or special counsel back in the day was doing it, and it was just found too costly. And where do you store it? Like, you literally get all their records, but if you didn't need it, you just lay it in a box, and then when you needed to look for it, it was a time for officers to go through pages and pages and pages of stuff to try to find it.
So the response of the pawn shops, I know they.
Yeah.
I'm a frequent visitor of that, so I'm not afraid to say it. They don't like it, but they're willing to work. They keep saying, they keep telling me, they'd rather pay a nurse or a police officer to mine. Because if you look at all the pawn shops in Wetaskiwin, the fees for each transaction, not for the next 5 years. So I'm going, we're not going to do this. I understand we're trying to do something. So for the next 5 years, it's not costing them nothing. Just the time to put it into the computer.
And exactly that. So of that, actually, I can just let me pull up this document. So of the surveys, we did ask how they are reporting it. And of this last most recent one, where was it here? We have like one that says, yeah, one's doing two of them are doing electronic, the other 4 they replied. The other 2 are paper. So yeah, if you're doing it by paper, we've included that in BWI. We'll let you use BWI software to do your transactions in the software itself, if you choose to use it. Of the pawn mate and pawn master, my understanding is BWI will interface with that. They'll help them. That's part of our agreement with BWI. We'll help them integrate those 2 systems together so that all they have to do is push a button, send them a file once a day, and it's uploaded in the system. They don't have to do anything with it. So, but if you're on paper, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of work, but you can use the BWI software. We're giving it to you for the first year to get used to it, and we're paying for it.
So estimating, I don't know if you can do that. They're saying it's going to cost them over $200,000 a year between all the pawn shops and that. So that revenue reduce 25. I don't know how much you're going to charge per transaction when this goes into effect or not. So 25 cents per transaction is $1.
So at this point, it's $1 per transaction, which $1. Which I guess like every other, I'm going to say every other tax is it's passed on to the person that pawns the item.
I mean, so, stupid question. I guess there's no stupid question. What do you do at a garage sale? What do you do at a garage sale? How do you know that stuff is not hot or not? That somebody broke it in? Because we have a lot of garage sales.
So good question. So it's no different than social media. So I like Facebook and I like their marketplace, right? So same thing. You have to do your due diligence as a person. If you're buying it, CPIC is online, it's free. You can log into CPIC on your mobile phone, put a serial number in there and see if it's stolen before you buy it.
Good. Anyone else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Second reading?
Yeah.
I move that City Council approve second reading of bylaw 1994-21 being the pawn shop, second-hand dealer, and scrap metal dealer bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 8A, policy CO-052.
No, they
No,
want to delay
we
it
didn't
60
do
days.
unanimous consent for third reading. So they're going to go back and talk to the people, and then we'll come back for third reading.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Are we doing the temporary patio?
Patio's up right now.
Is it up right now?
Yeah.
Any chance Inspector Keith can stay there and can stay behind? Because there is a question regarding that. I would like to ask.
Oh.
They all sit down.
Just confirmation on a question that could be legality.
Go ahead.
How did he freeze himself like that? He's perfect. Oh, there he's moving.
Are you waiting on me?
I wonder how a guy can sleep like that, though. You're up, Andrew.
Okay, Andrew, you're up.
Oh, okay. Sorry. That was the classic Zoom video issue. I could hear someone talking. I'm sure it was about me, but couldn't hear it. And sitting here like a big idiot. That's great. Okay. Thank you very much, Council. So this is arising from the April 12th meeting where Council directed us to take a look at instituting some kind of policy or something for patios for restaurants, of course, arising from provincial restrictions on restaurants being able to serve people indoors. So we had already been a little more lenient with our patio rules. And so that's how we've been operating up till now, issuing development permits. Of course, through the actual development permit process, these patios would require variances and that kind of thing, which involves a 21-day appeal period, which is obviously not what we want when we have a lot of restaurants that are looking to set these up and when we want to be really helpful to them operating and continuing to be successful businesses. So we took a look around at what other municipalities have started instituting here and looked at what our own approach could be. And so what we've come up with is just a policy that will operate essentially just outside of the land use bylaws. So it does consider the land use bylaw and that kind of thing, but it also operates just outside of that so that we don't need to go through the typical development permit process It's a temporary policy, so it will be in place till the end of October. October 30th was our goal for, we thought let's just, even if restrictions are alleviated, it seems like a good pilot project and something that we as the development department are comfortable with having in place for the entire summer, entire patio season. And then we'll reevaluate and see how it went come November. So quick summary, how it works is this is really just a policy framework. And so the framework is here so that we are able to enforce, and it's basically the mechanism by which we can let restaurant applicants know about the rules and regulations that we do have in place. And again, yeah, it does set out the enforcement options that there are just to keep a little bit of control to make sure that, especially where noise could be an issue with nearby residences and things like that, we can actually control that if we have to. So how it works is it's just an application, and the application form's included there with the policy. So what it looks like is business owners would take this application, fill out all the information, do up a site plan according to the regulations there, which include setbacks, if they're on private property, ensuring that the 2 meter separation or 2 meter walking distance is maintained. If they're taking up sidewalk space, they have to show where fire hydrants and things are, and that's a fire regulation or fire requirement of the fire department. Patios can't be permanent, so they do have to be temporary, and they have to be delineated by entirely movable fencing. They can also use patio furniture, planters, that kind of thing. There are time restrictions, so patios can operate between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. And that comes out of our community standards bylaw. And then all the other aspects of the community standards bylaw are just referenced, not spelled out specifically in this policy, but we include that reference to say all the other things within the community standards bylaw apply to your patio. And we also include, just that patios must comply with all other applicable AHS regulations. So once they submit that patio application, essentially it's a same day approval. They will be free to go set up their patio. And then we will be doing inspections from a development perspective to make sure that the patio is set up according to the site plan that they provided, and making sure that tables are set up with the 2 meter distance as required by AHS and that kind of thing, and also to ensure that fire regulations are met, which includes if they use heaters, the types of heaters, locations of fire extinguishers, making sure there's exits appropriate to the number of people and that kind of thing. The enforcement abilities here are essentially the same enforcement that is set out in the community standards bylaw. And so we do spell out the enforcement actions that we would take in the case of a contravention of that bylaw or of this policy. We do have it that we can shut down the patio at any time, just because this is a pilot and it's a little bit unknown. We're pretty sure that all of these patios will be done, within reason. Of course, anything could happen, so we want to be able to make sure that, for one, public safety is kept in mind, and nuisance complaints and that kind of thing. So that ability is there. I believe that's a quick overview, and I will open it up to questions now.
Councilor.
Through the chair to Andrew.
Can you make a motion?
Oh, you want a motion?
Yeah.
Sure, I can do that. I move that City Council approve policy CO 052.
Moved by Councilor Nielsen. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to Andrew. And I don't see it noted here in the bylaw. I was recently over in Camrose and I see a whole bunch of temporary patios with the sort of the white tents put up, with all the sides of the tents all zipped up because the weather was cold and windy. Where does that leave us in terms of what an outside patio turning into an indoor dining area?
Yeah, through the chair, as far as I know, it's actually a regulation under AHS that these patios are only allowed to have one enclosed wall. So I'm not exactly sure what the situation in Camrose was. It could be something different. I'm not exactly sure. But in our case, we would only require, or we would only allow one enclosed wall. And I think that I know of one currently operating here in the city that operates that way, and that's totally fine. If they were to erect more walls than that, we would follow through on some kind of enforcement.
Okay, so two things. One, I'm just wondering whether we shouldn't make a statement about walls or the number of walls allowed. And the other question is related to rooftops or ceilings to keep rain or clement weather off.
Through the chair, that's a question as to whether they should be allowed to have rooftops.
Yes.
As far as I am concerned, from a planning perspective and safety, as far as I know, roofs would be okay, and I think that that's fair in order to continue operation. You know, if it's raining and things like that. I don't know of an HS rule that says no roofs.
Okay.
As to your other point, we can certainly add a specific statement in there specifying only one enclosed wall.
Thank you. I think it would be wise to have it stated up front, just so people know what the expectation is, as opposed to making an expenditure renting something that they can't necessarily use. Thank you.
Yep.
They just had something on the news the other night where if you have a roof, you can only have a wall, let's say, and if you don't have a roof, then you can have two walls or something. Like there's a direct relation to roof compared to walls.
Okay.
Did you have anything to add to that, Trent?
So in regard, that's an AHS regulation. So because it's built into the patio policy that they have to comply with AHS, AHS has control over that.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you. A couple questions. I'll start off first. So we put a temporary tables and chairs. Where are we putting these? And these are on city sidewalk that we would have, they would be obviously fenced out. Does that mean that residents on the wheelchair ramp go around and walk where the parking stalls are?
Oh. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Through the chair, yeah. So we did originally contemplate this for restaurants that had already started asking about these, and all of those had set them up in their private parking lots because they had parking lots on their property. As we thought about this more, we realized there are restaurants that don't have a private parking lot, and so in order to include them, we did need to look at allowing these to encroach on public streets, or sidewalks. So yes, our requirement is that any patio leave no less than a 2-meter wide walkway, which does comply with the building code's accessible walkways requirements and things like that. So that is intended to maintain accessibility wherever it might be necessary.
So what I'm asking, if you can picture what I'm saying, Andrew. So let's say right beside Jasper, we have that pizza place. He's going to put his fencing up against his building and detour the pedestrians in front where the cars would park. Or are we just going to?
As long as there's 2 meters of sidewalk, he can have the patio set up on the sidewalk.
Okay. Now, if somebody's serving alcohol, that's my legal question to you. If they're serving alcohol and they're trespassing, I think, on public property with a beer, how does that work out? Because you're not supposed to have liquor on public property walking down the sidewalk.
The patio permit is allowing them to be outside on a sidewalk. So it's covered under the city's permitting of them using the sidewalk as part of their patio.
I I understand that.
There would have to be a delineation of the part of the sidewalk in which the business is using for their external business clientele. So there'll be a delineation either with planters or something along some fencing, portable fencing or something to say, this is my patio area, this is the sidewalk. If they're inside the patio area, then their regular liquor license should apply. We're not 100% sure. If they go to a patio license, they have to apply back to Alberta Gaming to get that if they don't have it already. And they will establish so many meters and they will establish that.
Our downtown sidewalk is 8 feet, 2.5 meters. So we're gonna have a 2-meter sidewalk accessibility, correct? So
That is the intent, yeah.
So if they're gonna use an outside patio, what I'm asking, are they gonna use the parking stall as part of their patio?
I see what you mean. To the chair, that's not contemplated right now. But if we do find that businesses are asking for it, that's partly why this is just a policy. So it's a pilot program. So if we need to make that change, then we can look into allowing the use of parking stalls for that. It's really, there's a lot of different types of businesses with different frontages right now. So we've tried to capture as many as we can, and we'll keep working on it depending on what we hear as this program goes forward.
You're asking us to pass something without knowing. Because if you're gonna use, okay, I prefer you would have used 1.5 meter on the sidewalk, 2 meters for leading people to walk or wheelchair or handicap. There's a lot of 6 feet. We only have 8 feet of sidewalk.
To the chair, part of the issue as well is that part of the COVID regulations are a 2-meter distance. And so having people, at the edge of the patio and then having people walk on the sidewalk, we should be allowing them to have 2 meters as well. So that's why we went with the 2 meters.
Okay, so here's the other question. Some of these restaurants that will have a garbage planter and a tree planter on their property. What if that's right in the middle of their window? Are they gonna go to the guy next door? I like the idea. We had it before we put this beautiful downtown in place. We used to have on the corner of the Iron Door, we used to have it. It came out onto the sidewalk, took out that parking lane. We used to have that there. Okay, so what the pedestrians would do, they'd walk around the building or the patio. There would actually be another fence or railing made out of 2x4 that they were actually walking. So that was against the building. But here, each location is going to be different because they're going to have a garbage, the tree, and the light post. So it's only a few places that could put a patio there. I'm not against patio, but it seems like 2 meters. I know that we got to be 2 meters away because we can't be closer. How much room do they have to put a patio and open? And if we're not invading into that parking spot, how much room do they got?
Through the chair, we haven't looked at every potential option because we put this together pretty quickly, and so we put it together with the mind that we would try to set out some rules that could be applicable to most situations. If there are situations where our current rules don't allow for a patio to fit, we will figure out a way to work with that situation going forward. If we need to bring it back to council with some amendments to this, we will. But as I said, we put this together pretty quickly, and so we think it will apply to most situations, and if it doesn't, then it's a pilot, so we can amend it as we go forward.
Anything else? I appreciate at which the speed you put this together and just being able to be nimble enough to help those businesses that are being affected by the restrictions put in place by the province. It isn't going to work for absolutely everybody, but it's better than nothing. So I appreciate the work that you and your team did, Andrew. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. 8B, concrete asphalt recycling. Have a good evening, Inspector.
The purpose of this RFP is to have council approve the proposed concrete asphalt recycling contract. Between 2008 and 2015, roughly 27,000 tons of material was accepted at the landfill. And the cost at that time to crush it was about $520,000. The local contractor approached the city to take over the asphalt and concrete recycling activities without the huge costs associated with it. Under their proposal, the city would retain the tipping fees for the concrete and asphalt coming onto the site. But once on site, the product would become property of the contractor for processing, and the finished product would remain the property of the contractor. The city would be able to purchase finished product at a wholesale price based on market value less a specified amount. The city is expected to realize cost savings by not having to pay for crushing costs upfront and reducing the inventory of recycled concrete and asphalt. Instead, the finished product would be purchased as needed. The proposed contract is for 5 years and would be revisited at that time by both parties.
Councilor Hilgard.
I move that the city council directs administration to execute the contract between the city of Wetaskiwin and Cobra Plumbing and Gas Fitting Limited for concrete and asphalt recycling at the city's landfill for up to 5 years.
Moved by Councilor Hilgard. Any discussion? Councilor Nielsen and Councilor Rocco.
Through the chair to Bob or Sue or a couple of questions. I was out at the landfill this other day and I actually see Cobra pushing material through. So where are we at with that? Like,
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, we did give them written permission to move on site with the caveat that if council denied it tonight, they would have to move out at their own expense.
but they're grinding stuff now.
Yes.
Given that the comment is that we had all this material, we're now just about out of it. So does that mean we've used it all or we've used it and sold some?
We've used the majority of that.
So we've used the majority of $520,000 worth of fresh product.
That's been over 7 years.
Okay. And so that means we paid what per ton if I do the math?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, I should also mention that we had a geotechnical expert come in and test the pile because what we thought we were getting back when we crushed it was not what we actually got. So the material was written and not seen as valuable as we once thought that it was. So we ended up losing a lot of money on that process.
I guess what I'm trying to wrestle with here is, are we better off to pay the money to have it crushed and then pay nothing to use the material, or to get off the hook for $500,000 of crushing and then pay who knows what to use it? Like, do we have a guaranteed fixed rate on product to purchase?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, we don't have a guaranteed price, but it would be below market. We actually do believe that this is a better position for us because what ended up happening with the other material was our geotechnical guy said, you can throw it in under sidewalks or in a back alley, but you can't use it for what it is actually intended for. So it ended up costing us, it would have cost us more than road crush if we would have tried to sell it. And it became virtually not useless because we were able to do it in those areas, but we couldn't sell it to make the money back. We would have never used that amount in what we're doing. And so we only used it because we wrote it down and we could use it in back alleys. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but we would never spend that much money purchasing that material for our own purposes. And we really have no business. The only person or our municipality that we know that's involved in this is the city of Edmonton, and they have a finely tuned machine, and they're out to make money with stuff like this. And so it doesn't make sense for a municipality to be in the business of crushing asphalt and concrete. And if we're getting our money when it's coming in, we're getting paid for it coming into the landfill, we could even hold that money into a reserve to purchase the materials that we need in the future.
And then I guess my last question, and again, if this is a way we need to go, I'm pleased that it's local, but what is the rationale or what is the explanation to the community when we say we're giving away $500,000 worth of assets to a local company, and for the most part, the only thing we get out of it is saved space. Why would that not be put out in an RFP or a tender process?
Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we're not giving them any materials. So we're getting compensated for materials coming in. So we're being paid based on the weight, and then they're getting that material that we've been paid for, and they have to do all the crushing, and they're recouping their costs through selling it. So we're giving them a material that someone has paid us to take, and we're giving it to Cobra to crush. I mean, we could put that out for tender and say, who wants this material? And you need to pick it up. I guarantee you that price is going to be way more than what we're getting for the dumping fee.
But bear with me here. If we're taking the tipping fees, and if we actually collected them and didn't put them into general revenues at some place in time, then those tipping fees could go to offset the cost of any grinding that we would have to pay to do. I'm just trying to figure out the math, because in here, there's no math for me to work with, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't know how much we've received in tipping fees and how much it would cost us to actually pay somebody to come in and grind it, and therefore what our for real expenses are at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we could break even. So we could say if in the end it's going to cost us $10 a ton to, I'm just using random numbers, don't call me out on it, Joe. If we charge $10 a ton for this to come in and it cost us $10 a ton to crush it, then we're in the business of selling this material and competing with private business. And I'm just wondering, why would we do that? So in the past, we didn't break even. Do I believe we could break even in the future? I do. I don't know what exactly that dollar amount looks like that we would have to recover, but we could certainly do that. The risk comes in that if that dollar amount is too high, we start finding it out in the county on the dump road. We start finding material just dumped around instead of actually brought to the landfill.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess you raised the question about setting the dollars aside from the tipping fees to offset the cost of purchasing it back. From a fiscal perspective, does that make sense? I mean, in my head it does. But I'm assuming that we are counting on tipping fees as part of our overall general revenue. Have we built in somewhere else the cost of buying crush back from Cobra?
Yeah, and we typically don't need the wrap material, the recycled asphaltic product. We usually look at 20 mil road crush or sand. Like our operations, Public Works covers that in their budget to purchase what we need each year. And really the only reason we used the wrap material was because we had it. We knew that we couldn't sell it and it was going to work in the alleys.
Thank you.
Thank you. If it's okay, Sue, if you don't mind, Wayne, costs about $16 a ton to crush that stuff to 3-inch minus, so 2 3/4, 3-inch. That's used basically for your doing major excavation sluice spot. My question is, since we're giving that for free, we're delivering it to the city landfill, we're going to charge tipping fee. So if we charge tipping fee on a tender, that lineal meter of asphalt or tipping or concrete is going to be depending on what the contractor, you don't know until the contractor, the general knows, but that's all added in to the unit rate for the dumping fee. So we don't know what the contractor charges for tipping fee to haul it out there, tipping fee. I think it's, what we paid, $25 a ton, $75 a ton for tipping fees for concrete and asphalt.
Bob, do you know what it is off the top of your head?
It's about $28.50 around there somewhere.
So we're looking at 28 feet a ton times 12 tons, so roughly $300 a gravel box. So if the contractor adds that to our tipping fee, the unit rate of the product goes up because he's got to pay you. In return, we pay, well, we don't pay Cobra. But my question is, how much are we going to use of that crushed concrete? If we're, 200,000 tons a year, 150,000 tons a year, we're crushing, or 100 tons. And how much are we going to use of that for our own? Or is it cheaper to buy gravel?
Through the chair to Councilor Bronco, it is cheaper for us to just go with 20 mil road crush or whatever the design calls for. We don't have a lot of designs that typically call for wrap material. It's used sometimes as a cost savings or in areas where we have high water tables. So we wouldn't use enough, and that was the whole point, that pile that we had, unless we were going to sell it, we would have never used it until a geotech guy wrote it down and we put it into the alleys. So that's not a product that as a municipality that we need to purchase. So we're trying to make a conscious decision to not be in the business of crushing and selling wrap material because we don't need it.
We just need it out of there.
So if Cobra's taken over that, they're going to crush it, they're going to keep it, they're going to sell it to whoever they want. And it's, let's say, for example, they needed 50,000 tons or 20,000 tons to go there, and then whoever they're selling, they have access to our landfill whenever they want to do that for those trucks to come in.
Through the chair to Councilor Bronco, in the agreement, Cobra has access outside of normal business hours. They won't be using our scale. They have their own way of weighing, and they'll be able to bypass the scale. And they also have to maintain their haul road and their internal road if it starts to damage because of their activities.
We don't know yet what we're going to get a ton for that. What?
Well, we have prices set in our land use by, or sorry, our master rates bylaw already, the 28.75 or whatever Bob said.
That's what we're going to get for when the product is sold.
When it comes in, when it gets sold.
I mean, if they sell it,
We don't
get nothing of that.
We get paid on the way in, and then Cobra does all the work, and then they get to sell it.
Now, that said here, the concrete, the asphalt is the property of the city once it's inside. It's the landfill, correct?
No, we would get payment as it comes in, and then once it goes to the location that Cobra's at, it becomes theirs.
I understand, but it has to come through our wear scale in order for us to get paid for it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Nope. That's good.
My mind's a wicked thing, I think. So if they have access and they can't use our scales, so hypothetically, Cobra does a big job and they have 20 tons of concrete that they've excavated. They could potentially bring it in without a tipping fee.
No.
Why couldn't they?
No.
They have access to it?
Anything that comes into to our dump site has a tipping fee.
Yeah, but they've got after hours access is what Councilor Nielsen is saying. So
Oh.
if they're bypassing our scale and they come in at 7:44 at night
With their own,
with their own material because they've done a job, they go there, they crush it, and then they
Haul it out?
Yeah.
Yeah, but what do we care about that? So that would be no different than if they pulled that machine off and drove it down the road and
To their yard.
crushed that material in their own yard.
Yeah. If it's not taking up space in our dump.
Right. It's, to me, this whole plan is no different than us saying, we're going to charge you, and then we're going to crush it, and we're going to try and sell it or use it. No difference. It's just a matter of who's managing the process now. We're not going to be out any money because of this. And as a matter of fact, we don't have to now do the crushing, which is a whole other contract. Then we don't have to try and sell it, which is something we're probably not really good at.
Or have to leave it in our
Right.
landfill. Councilor Hogan.
so basically the risk is all on Cobra. Once they crush it,
So
they have to sell it. The other thing in there, what if, do we have a time limit when this has to be crushed? So let's say, they find out after the first year, geez, we're losing money on crushing it. So we got a 5-year contract, we're just gonna let the stuff pile up and then not crush it.
Through the chair to Councillor Hillgartner, we do not have anything in there that specifically says they have to crush it within a certain amount of time. It's an asset that it's worth money. So if they end up leaving it here, we're not out money.
Yeah.
And we do also have an exit clause in there for both parties. So if they want to give notice that they're done, they can move out. We could put certain conditions on and vice versa.
Okay, good, thank you.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Oh, jeez. Carried. Eight C, archives assessment, project update and discussion.
Good evening, Council. I have an update on the archives assessment project. I'm looking for some direction this evening. So I was last before Council on March 22nd to speak specifically about the Watasquan archives and the assessment project that we've scoped out here. At that point in time, I had informed you folks that we had been working with an archives professional in the country. We had helped scope out a project with a methodology we thought was suitable to achieve some of the objectives we had identified in our project plan. And at the last minute, that individual became not available. During that meeting, the committee provided the following feedback that we documented. So I'm just going to go through it here to ensure we didn't miss anything. Firstly, it was that to ensure that the archives is operating efficiently, to better understand how other municipalities are using their archives, that you folks want recommendations on the best type of archives for the community, how it should be governed, and a clear roadmap on how to best move forward, and that you're looking for recommendations how we can better manage the archives. So since our last discussion, administration has engaged a management consulting firm with support from an experienced archives subject matter expert to lead this project. The project objective and the project plan methodology remains the same. The scope of the revised project plan includes the following. So the management consultant is proposing to development of a stakeholder engagement plan to gather inputs from identified stakeholders and general community members to assess Watasquan Archives' past, present, and potential future, to assess the current state of records and processes in Watasquan Archives, to assess the needs and gaps, to identify solutions to address current needs and to achieve long-term sustainability, and to develop a final report that would summarize the key findings and recommendation. And so the methodology that I presented on March 22nd and the methodology now haven't changed too much. The decision we're looking for here this evening is currently there's limited availability of a qualified archivist to support the project until June. And so right now there are two paths that administration has identified to move this forward. First one is we could start the project immediately. What that looks like is management consulting firm would work with administration and the community to start doing the assessment, start conducting the stakeholder engagement independently and collecting all of this raw information. And then they would engage an archivist towards the end as they're developing their final recommendations and a report. The major risk with this is that not having an archivist engaged right from the beginning may not result in as comprehensive a solution or recommendations as we want moving forward, not to mention the potential risk that it looks like we are proceeding with archives review without an expert on board. The second piece is that we can delay the start of this project until June when an archivist is available. This option would ensure that the archivist is involved right from start through finish of the project. So because of those two pieces of information, administration is recommending to delay the start of this project until June when an experienced archivist is available. The proposed timeframe for this project would run from June until September, and the anticipated budget, similar to March 22nd, would range between $30,000 and $40,000, being funded from the existing archives cost center, which was formerly being used to operate the archives. So administration will conclude our report, but we are looking to council for insight, comments, and feedback to help finalize the project plan, finalize the scope of work with the consultant, and officially start this project. With that, I will open it up to feedback from council.
Thank you, Worship. I move that council grant an extension for the archives assessment project as detailed in the report dated April 26, 2021, with a closing date from Q2 2021 to Q3 2021. And in speaking to that, I think it's really important that, given the concern expressed to us by the local genealogy society, that it is seen that we are doing justice to the project by having an archivist on board.
I concur. And just for clarification, do you need this as a motion as information as well, or just a direction from council?
With my reports, you'll always get the first one on information, so we don't need that to move. The whole intent is just to get the delay in the project from Q2 to Q3.
Yeah, we can come back and say that we didn't agree with your information. We just made a motion as per your information.
Perfect.
Anything else? For the question, those in favor? Carried. We will skip 8D. 8E, council approved for provincial deployment.
Good evening, council. The purpose of this RFD is to obtain pre-approval from our city council in the event that the Watasquan Fire Services may be called upon to assist the provincial government or other municipalities with fire protection outside our municipal jurisdictions during the 2021 wildfire season. If you recall, over the past few years, our department has been called on quite a few times to assist with other communities in need. Majority of these communities were ones that bordered up against or had a wildland urban interface community around them, so where the forest meets the city. Watasquan does not have that situation to us, but we do have areas such as Jasper, Fort McMurray, High Level, areas that have already seen fires. So we're asking for pre-approval if a call comes from the provincial government during this wildfire season, that we do have the approval to send some of our assets and personnel to assist other communities in need. So in 2016, if we recall, the fire service has been called up to Fort McMurray to help with those large fires. Again, in 2019, to the high level wildfires. 2020, it just rained all the time, so we were good. And with that, it is just to gain that permission, because these calls do come in at odd times of the day. Just an example, the 2017 wildfire, I was called upon. The call came in at midnight to deploy. So instead of waking up all of our council members, our CAO, we already had our permissions in place to deploy. Currently, because we do operate under 2 jurisdictions here, we work for the Rural Protection Zone 2 and for the city of Watasquan. The assets from the rural board have already been granted permission to deploy if requested. Most of the requests that would come would be more in the type of a water tender to supply water support to ground crew operations. However, there could be the off chance that a community is going to be affected and the calls for city engines or city apparatus and firefighters are needed to protect structures from the incoming fire. So there may be a question come up, what about our community? So we are going to keep an eye on the fire danger level around us, and we can decline at any time if our fire danger is too high to send out assets. But we also have the ability to rely on water supply if we do send a water tender to our neighboring municipalities such as Millet, South Pigeon, Musqueam that can provide water support if we do have a rural incident. So at this time, like I say, we're just looking for pre-approval to send in the event that something should happen. And under the financial section, if you want to read that on your own time, it does have a little bit of the requirements. Of course, from us, we do get cost recovery from this, so there is a benefit to it as well. So at this time, if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer those.
Councilor Blatz.
I move that City Council directs administration to deploy personnel and possibly city apparatus if requested by the Provincial Operations Center during the 2021 season.
Moved by Councilor Blatz. Any discussion? Councilor Hilgardner.
First, can we get Jamie's computer fixed?
It's brand new. It's all of them do this for some reason. I don't know what's going on with these. It's a little fan in the back.
Was that it?
That's it.
That's it. So, Chief, I got hammered pretty hard about council not supporting another position with the fire service because of the workload that you currently have, being spread thin with resources, et cetera, et cetera. So while I absolutely support the motion, and we've been in positions before where we've had to call on mutual aid to have other departments come and help us out, and I absolutely see that. I just, if we're spread as thin as we are in terms of needing more personnel to help out with stuff around the hall, where does that leave us or you and the deputy chief when or if we are deploying resources outside of our municipality?
Great question. So hopefully to provide some light on that, the deputy chief and myself, the full-time personnel, we won't deploy to this, so we can maintain what our daily workload is, or try to keep up. Typically what has happened over the last deployment is personnel that wish to go usually took vacation time from their regular jobs. So some of the guys weren't available to us, most of the time anyway. Maybe at nighttime they're available, but daytimes they were not. They just took vacation times from their regular jobs to go on these. I wish I could honestly say this year is not going to be as busy as 2019, but that would be a total lie because we are busy this year. We are maintaining. We are falling behind on a few things. The outdoor patios, of course, did not help the situation at all, but we are making do. But it does go back again to a comment that we do have the ability to decline if we do find that, okay, we are stretched right thin, or if, we just have too much going on in the city. So there is that option as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Council. Have a good evening.
You as well. Item 8F, Notice of motion from Councillor Nielsen, Art Committee and Art Reserve.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sorry that this came to you so late. It wasn't ready in the time the agenda came out. And I did circulate, I think, last evening or yesterday, so I think most people have seen it. The nuts and bolts of it is basically the very first amount, which was to go into an art reserve, $50,000 was earmarked and just put into I'm going to call it a general reserve account because we didn't have an art reserve at the time. It was earmarked for art dollars, and somehow it lost that earmarking and simply got absorbed into our financial reserves. Initially, and I think Joe may have been here at the time, I know Tyler and I both were when this came up, Councillor Macquarie put it forward. It really was to look at a possibility of doing an art display at the center of the roundabout right across the street. And at the time, Community Services put out a call to the public requesting ideas for the project. A number of submissions came in, and actually one was investigated, which was a tree sculpture where when the wind blew, the leaves spun, created electric power to light the thing up and blah, blah. Unfortunately, that particular item was not able to be shipped to North America at the time. And then with changes within the organization, the project seemed to have been lost in all the paperwork. So I'd like to see two things happen. I would like administration to make recommendations to find $50,000 to put into the current art reserve, which is what was expected to happen in the first place. And I have no idea where that would be, whether it come out of bits and pieces out of different reserves or whether it come out of accumulated surplus or whatever. And then I'd like to see the established, if that happens, then I'd like to see the establishment of a community art committee, whose focus would be to research what constitutes community art, because in actual fact, community art can be a ton of different things. Make recommendations to council administration regarding the use of the art reserve funds for the procurement of community art, and then engage the community in soliciting ideas for such a project. So on that note, I'd like to make a motion that council directs administration to return $50,000 to the community art reserve from identified suitable sources.
Moved by Councillor Nielsen. Any discussion? Councillor Brown.
My colleague, I lived here for the 70,000 for those trees coming out of Germany. We had a whistle. I remember that. I was here when we did that.
Right. Was it?
Thank God.
My reservation on this would be that I don't want administration to find $50,000 and put it into a reserve. I would like administration to identify where 50,000 could come from, and council be able to say yay or nay, depending on what that might do to our reserves or potential.
Could you say that again, please? Find out where what?
Identify where the $50,000 could come from, whether it was from 17 different reserves, not that we have 17 reserves, but that they identify where it could come from, and then council make the decision as to whether or not we still need it to be $50,000 or want it to be $50,000 in that art reserve, or if it's something that we now start building from whatever dollar figure we're comfortable with, if we're taking it from A, B, or C reserve to restart that art reserve.
In my opening conversation with Sue on this topic, I asked the same question. Can we track where the money went?
I'm not talking about tracking where it came from or where it went.
Oh.
I'm talking about if they're going to bring us where $50,000 can come from.
Okay.
I don't want them to come up with $50,000 and then all of a sudden next year we're doing something and it's like,
Yeah.
well, we used to have
Okay.
$35,000 there. Well, no, that went to the art reserve.
So based on the recommendations, we'd say yay or nay to that
Correct.
amount moving
Yeah,
forward.
it could be $50,000 or it could be $5,000, depending on what our reserves look like and where they're taking it from. I don't want it to be an automatic $50,000 into an art reserve fund. I want them to identify where it can come from, and then council make the decision that we're going to use those or we're going to allocate those funds from those reserves. Am I making sense?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
totally. I'm just, sure. I know, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it there.
Yeah. And the reason that I think that that works better for me is that we had the art reserve set up, or we thought we had the art reserve set up. $50,000 disappeared and went and got spent someplace else. That I wouldn't want money from another reserve that we thought we had earmarked for whatever, all of a sudden came into an art reserve that maybe wasn't the best decision based on our reserve levels at the time. So I would make that as an amendment then, that they bring us back. They identify the sources of which it can come from, not necessarily just come back with $50,000. So we'll have discussion on the amendment. Councilor Bronco.
I agree with you, but I still like to know where the $50,000 went. Because if we're shifting money from here to there, we're shifting money. Not supposed to shift money. So I agree with you. I don't want to take money out of here, but I'd like to know where it went. Did we overrun in some aspect of another project?
The reserve just wasn't set up. So what I think happened is that council said we want $50,000 for an art reserve. It probably stayed in like the general revenue. And so the administration of the day knew that $50,000 was allocated for an art fund. And then administration changed, and all of a sudden $50,000, there wasn't a little IOU written in a book that says $50,000 is for this.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we pass a policy that 1.5% of every project we did, some of that funding went into an art?
Yep.
So how much do we have in the art fund?
I'm not sure.
Through the chair to Councilor Bronco, it's 0.5% up to a maximum of $25,000 a year.
Right.
So
And so we have 2 years worth, year number 2 and year number 3, sitting in an art reserve.
So there is an art reserve established.
Yeah.
Right.
with no money.
But the initial $50,000 was never started in there. It stayed in a general revenue and then it never carried forward from.
Yeah, but we do have a policy.
Correct.
Like
Yeah.
I said, at 5.5%, I've done.
Could we also get a date on when it's to come back? So identify which reserves potentially and the date.
Well, I'm in no rush for this. You pick a date that works for you. I mean, it's not like we're in a hurry to go out and spend money. It's just that we know there's a direction that we've got to do some work in this area, and whether it comes back 2 months from now or
In July.
sure.
Art is subjective. We say that the security guard outside the hub is art.
Yeah, I can draw on it.
That's really
Yeah, sure.
that's really subjective, yeah.
You can put graffiti on it.
Okay, my amendment was that we have administration come back identifying where it could come from, not necessarily that it's there. So discussion on that. If not, then I'll call for the vote. Ready for question, all in favor? That administration identify
The potential, because that's all it is.
yeah. To fund $50,000 to the community art reserve. Okay, so that's the amendment. Ready for the question, those in favor? Carried. All right, motion on the floor. And we'll need to add a date to it, Councilor Nielsen.
Candace? I mean, again, I mean, we've talked about the workload. I don't want to create an undue expectation here. No, the 50,000, it's all about.
So the last meeting in June.
Sure.
Okay. Any other discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried.
Could I move on to a second motion, please?
Yes.
And again, because there's money there and there may be potentially more money coming in the years to come, I would move the council directs administration to draft a terms of reference with the intention of establishing a community art committee to provide recommendations for the procurement of community art. And I will say Sue's already done a little bit of work there, and I haven't commented back on it. But I think it's a decent starting point. July 28th. And I'm being facetious with that, but it's not like we're in any hurry to go out and spend money. It's just putting the wheels in motion more than anything at this point in time.
Councilor Bronco.
Can I make a friendly amendment to that?
Maybe.
We never use this $50,000 over the next few years. Can we have a maximum on that? Because are we planning to spend so much a year? Because if we don't, and we just keep doing constructions, okay. So we're going to do a $30 million waste treatment plant. That's construction. Do we take 0.5% of that and put it into the art?
Nope.
Through the chair to Council Bronco, it's 0.5% up to $1 million. Or sorry, the project has to be at least $1 million, and it's a maximum of 25,000 a year that can be put in. So it's not going to be 0.5% of a $40 million facility.
And my amendment is that how much are we going to have in this art fund before we spend it? Or if we don't spend it this year, next year, the year after, and all of a sudden we got $200,000, when are we going to spend it?
I thought we did have just when we needed to spend it.
No, we had a limit on how much money is going to be in art reserve. I'm pretty sure we did that.
Entire reserve, or
We
was
had
it
a
just the
cap on it.
annual contribution? Did we cap the entire reserve or just the contribution?
The contributions yearly. I don't think there's a cap on the committee or on the reserve fund. But again, so yeah, I guess you could put millions in if you never spent any money over 20 years or something. But I think the intention of a community art committee would be to start. I mean, if you decided to put up something like the city of Edmonton or Calgary, you'd blow through the whole wad in one shot. Or you come up and do a number of littler projects to get the ball rolling and create some community interest and investment in it. I think there's a fair amount of work that would need to be done before you spent anything, just in terms of what constitutes community art. Because everybody that I've talked to thinks, oh, it's a mural or a statue.
Or big silver balls.
Or big silver balls in the city of Edmonton, yeah. And
fixing the water.
And I think the committee would have a fair amount of work to do to come back to council and say, here's the kinds of things we view as community art. And then maybe you launch a couple of little projects. And little projects could cost you tens of thousands of dollars.
And I think to your point, even if we're only at $25,000 a year capping, even at 10 years, it's only $250,000. That would be, I don't think we're
Two silver balls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we're getting anywhere near the point where we need to worry about capping it. If in 10 years an art committee hasn't spent $250,000, then we've got other issues, I think. We don't have a very active art committee.
Yeah.
Look at the skateboard part.
But you know, that's not out of the realm of possibility either.
For sure.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Councillor Billingsley had added an item on security. We could probably carry that over for the next meeting.
He's asked me to speak to that.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely then.
Thank you. Well, he's asked Gabby and I to speak to it. So I'll try and kick this off, and if she wants to add anything, she's welcome to, for sure. From our previous conversation, Dean had talked a lot about the safety and the perception of what's going on outside of the hub, and what are we planning on doing about it. And so to spark some conversation and maybe even some decision making, he was going to make a motion that here, I'll give it my best kick at it. Council directs administration to examine the possibilities of full-time security added to the civic building for the purposes of outside supervision / enforcement, and also with an intent, I'm just making stuff up as I go along now, also with an intent to attempt to try and keep FCSS in the building and the revenue from that.
Moved by Councillor Nielsen / Billingsley / Bluff. I assume you have most of that information from when we were looking at. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want them to go into the civic building. I want that security somewhere else. Sorry, Karen, Ari's the teacher.
No, I think that's good.
Anything else?
It's realistic.
Is there much work that you have to do to get that information, Sue? Paul?
To the mayor, we do have quite a bit of this information. It still exists. To do this justice, we can answer the question as the motion as it currently reads. We would also want to ensure that we're connecting with stakeholders like the Open Door specifically to understand the impact on their business and look at potentially alternative solutions as well. So we can turn this around as quickly as council would like us to, but we do have a lot of the information. I still think we do need to connect the Open Door to ensure their perspective is provided.
Is May 25th? 2 council meetings from now. Okay. Go ahead.
I forgot that there was a part of what Dean said that I think changes also some parts of the motion, because he wanted us to explore funding options for the possibility of full-time security being added to the civic building. So that kind of also changes everything, because
I can't hear you.
Dean really wanted to have at the beginning of this that we would explore funding options to examine the possibility of full-time security being added to the civic building. So I think that's kind of a key part of what he was thinking of, was that it was that we would look at different funding options for it in case there's something that we can do aside from taking it from a reserve or finding other modes of funding for it.
As in like a grant? No. Okay.
That's what his intent was, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So can I add? Examine the possibility of full-time security with potential funding sources or whatever added to the civic building. No, that changes it. And because I don't want to add potential funding sources to the civic building.
to examine the possibility of potential funding sources.
Sure. Can we have full-time security? Please, thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, our chair to Paul. Paul, just an idea came up. Is there any risk of what you're doing with the archives? What you're doing there, because we haven't opened the archives for the hub, it's still in the civic building. Do you see any possibility interaction with the hub patients in the archive? People, if we go ahead and do this study that you're doing with the archive, risk?
Through the mayor to Councilor Branco, good question. Very early on, when the hub first started operating at the civic building, we ensured that the archives were secured and that the only people that have access to that area are facility staff. In the event that we need a consultant to come here and review the area and spend some time in the archives, they would be fine as long as they were accompanied by city staff from an insurance perspective. So there is no risk to the archives.
Thank you.
And I think we had this, sorry, through the chair to Sue. I think we had this information before, but currently what is FCSS paying for, or Paul, the space for in the civic building?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councilor Nielsen, the information I pulled up earlier this evening, I believe annually they pay about $35,000 per year for the space they're occupying.
Is that actual dollars or is that in kind some way?
That's money in, money out.
So we give them the money and they give it back to us.
It's actually accounted for as part of our 20%. So if they need $1 million to function in a year, the agreement with the province is that the province pays 80% of that, we pay 20. And so it's, you know, we're charging just for the space. We have a separate charge for admin fees and all the other pieces. So all of that totals our 20%, which is in kind.
Right, but that would still be our expense if we moved out of the facility. Right?
It would be less revenue coming in, and then we would have to find the 35,000 to give them to rent somewhere else.
Right. So we're double 65.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So keeping them there would be a good thing. Yeah.
Anything else? All right, for the question, those in favor? Carried. Item 9A. I had this sent to me. We've had a discussion through AUMA. AUMA is in contact with, I believe his name is Mayor Snodgrass. I don't think that there was anything for us to do. I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of it. And then if you wanted to get into a letter writing campaign, then by all means we could. Okay, good enough. Okay. You can accept it as information. So moved by Councillor Blatz. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Motion to go in camera. Councillor Blatz. Those in favor? Carried. We are now in camera.
We have 8 minutes for me to win the
Opposed? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Blatz, those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Long day. Thanks.